This Creditors in Commerce classroom session, hereinafter session, is the private exchange of ideas and concepts between the providers and the recipients. The content is not meant as legal advice. The use or attempted use of any idea or procedure discussed in this session as applied to the recipient's own personal transactions, cases, or controversy, or applied to other cases, may or may not result in a favorable outcome or the same outcome as discussed in this session. Each transition or transaction, case, or controversy may be different as a result of unique actions or unique statements made by the parties therein, and each different act or statement in any transaction affects or may affect whether any procedure or idea discussed in this session is relevant to your transaction or that the outcome thereof will be depicted as in this session. The discussion of ideas or procedures in this session is not exhaustive of the subject being discussed. Many ideas and concepts that can affect the outcome of any legal or commercial procedure are not discussed in this session, and the fact that you may not be aware of these issues may have an adverse effect on the outcome of your procedure. It is the responsibility of each party to understand his own transactions and to apply the appropriate and complete concepts necessary for a procedural and substantive remedy thereto. This session may be redistributed privately by any recipient to another recipient requesting them, conditioned upon the fact that this notice is provided therewith. If you have any questions, you may contact Brandon by email at harmony@creditorsincommerce.com or by telephone at 702-866-9077.
So I'm going to turn it over to Brandon here, so if you'd like to please join me, give a very nice warm welcome to Brandon.
Alrighty. Thank you for coming. My name is Brandon Alexander Adams. Everyone on the phone can hear me? Yes? Okay. Okay. Wanted to, this particular class we're going to do today is an introduction, laying a foundation for the inner workings of commerce. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the entire global system of government and economics all operate in the system of commerce. Today we won't actually go over any specific procedures. Today is basically just foundational so that you get an idea of how things are working. Once you have an idea of how things are working, we'll actually move forward with actual procedures that we use as creditors. We will distinguish between operating as a debtor and operating as a creditor. However, I'm sure none of you need any education on operating as debtors, seeing as you're educated by the public school systems to be debtors from the time you're very young. So we won't be touching too much on debtors other than to make the distinction between how a creditor and a debtor differ in their actions within commerce. So to start off, maybe I'll go through what I call law forms and jurisdictions to give you an idea of what those are. Okay, law forms, we can look at it like a pyramid. Each successive law form falls within the law form before it. And at the top of the pyramid, we have natural law. Natural law is that law form that makes it possible for you to be here. Your existence, creation itself, the physics of the universe, all come under natural law. Okay? Underneath natural law, the next law form would be commercial law. Commercial law is any interactions between sovereign beings. When I say sovereign, all I mean is someone who has control over their property, not someone who is in possession of property, not someone who is an owner, but someone who actually controls. Okay? Two sovereign entities have complete freedom to contract with each other in any way that they see fit. There are no oversight of their contract. If two individuals outside of any jurisdictions decide to contract between each other, that would be in the area of commercial law. The next level down I would call common law. Common law is a society or a group's agreement on how to interact with each other. For instance, you have the United States. And the United States is a society. And within the society, we have decided that there are certain guidelines under which we will conduct business with each other, and we are in agreement under those guidelines. So that's what I would call the common law. Now, within the common law, I don't mean it in the sense, if you've heard of law forms such as admiralty and commerce and statutes, I'm not talking about it in that sense. When I say common law, I'm just meaning, in general, a group of people have decided to be under these guidelines. Okay? The next level would be what I call statutes. Now, statutory law is, for example, the U.S. has 52 titles of statutes in the U.S. Code. For instance, I'm sure you've all heard of the tax code. And the tax code is Title 26 of the U.S. Code. That falls into the arena or the law form of statutory law. Underneath statutory law, is it 1, 2, 3, 4? Yeah. We have the final law form, or the lowest on the pyramid, and I would call that political law. Political law, for instance, I know this may be a bad example, but if I play in a soccer league, I am under the laws of that soccer league in what I do. There are no statutes in the U.S. Code that say this is how you play soccer. Okay, so soccer has its own group of laws, and that would be underneath all of these, because the field I'm playing on may be in a public area where statutory law prevails, so I can't shoot someone on the soccer field, even though the laws of soccer don't exclude me from shooting someone. The statutory law governing the law that the soccer field is in does prevent me from shooting them. But the political law of soccer says I can't hit someone, I can't push them over for no reason. So that gives you that's the basic law forms that we will be discussing today. Most of us operate in statutory law. If you operate as a U.S. citizen or as a U.S. corporation or as an officer of a U.S. corporation, you're operating within statutory law. Now, the advantages of understanding how to be a creditor in commerce is that you will learn how to operate in the highest law form, which is commercial law. And you will learn to do that through being as a creditor, you will learn to control property. Okay? Does anyone remember the quote by Rockefeller back in the early, I believe it was the 1800s, early 1900s? It was early 1900s and the antitrust things were going on. He said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, own nothing, control everything. Has anybody ever heard that quote? Okay. Do you own your car?
No, I do.
Well, let's say your car's paid for. Do you own the car?
No.
You do own the car. Okay? You do not control the car. Can the state take the car away from you? Yes, because they control it. Okay? Now, there are two different types of title. There is equitable title and there is legal title. Okay? Equitable title is owner, operator, debtor's title. Okay? When we say you own your car, that's what we mean. You have equitable title, meaning you can sell it and you can make money from selling it, but you do not have control over the vehicle because you did not issue the title for the vehicle. The state issued the title and they gave you a certificate of title. Okay? That means they're holding the legal title. The legal title to the car was actually the MSO that came from the dealership when you purchased the car. The MSO got sent to DMV or the state to hold. They are holding the legal title.
What it stands for, MSO?
MSO, Manufacturer's Statement of Origin. Yeah. So that's the actual title on the vehicle. Okay?
Do they ever disclose that when they sell you the car and you just don't know where?
No. They actually, you do sign something that gives them a power of attorney to send it to the state. Okay? Your documents that you sign in closing on the vehicle, you basically give them power of attorney to take the MSO and give it to the state on your behalf. Now, if you were purchasing the car and you told them, I'm taking this to a foreign jurisdiction, I am not keeping it here in the state, they'll give you the MSO if you ask for it. Okay? But again, that's a procedure, and we need to talk about being a creditor. I wouldn't suggest to anybody in here that you go and take legal title of your vehicle, because being a creditor involves a lot of responsibility. Okay? The person with legal title takes responsibility for the property. Okay? So next we'll talk about, we did law forms. Maybe I'll do jurisdiction.
There was equitable title.
Equitable title and legal title. Okay, you'll hear me a lot of when we're speaking. I'm going to give you some foundational stuff so that when I say it, you'll know what I'm talking about, because I'll use a lot of terminology. If you have any questions about the terminology I'm using, ask, and I'll clarify for you what it means. We'll have an official question and answer session as we roll up towards the end, and then we'll pass the mic around for questions. Otherwise, I'll repeat the questions best I can into the mic. Okay, you'll hear me talk about jurisdiction A and jurisdiction B. Okay? Now, these are not official titles of actual jurisdictions. So, what I'm talking about when I'm discussing jurisdiction A and jurisdiction B, jurisdiction A, I will also refer to as private. Jurisdiction B, I will refer to as public. Okay? I'll also refer to jurisdiction B as a democracy. And I will refer to jurisdiction A as a republic. Let's see, how else do I break down jurisdictions? That's good for now. So, how many of you are familiar or know the difference between a republic and a democracy? Okay, a couple people. When the United States was established in 1776, not 1789, with the Declaration of Independence, we established, through the Articles of Confederation, a republic. A republic is sovereign. It controls its property. Okay? In 1782, with the end of the Revolutionary War, the national government went to the people, or the states, I should say, and asked the states to foot the bill for the debt that had been incurred by the national government. With the creation of the national government in 1776, or the signing of the Articles of Confederation, the national government took on the debt of the Revolutionary War on behalf of the states. Okay? The states in 1782 basically said they would not pay the debt. Okay? So the national government was forced to form a constitution. Okay? Does anyone know what a constitution is? Okay. Does anyone know the definition of a constitutor? One who creates a constitution. Definition of a constitutor is basically one who passes his debts to a third party. Okay? If you read the Constitution, pay very close attention to the preamble in Article 6, you'll notice that they capitalize a lot of words that really, by the proper use of English, shouldn't be capitalized. Right there in the preamble, it says something about securing the
Blessings of liberty.
securing the blessings of liberty, and it's capital B, capital L. Okay. The Constitution itself is a security. Because the states wouldn't pay the debt, they had to create a security with sureties to basically back the debt, so that the national government could do business with other national governments. Basically, if you don't pay your debts and don't have a surety for your debts, no one's going to do business with you. Like when little Timmy, 16-year-old Timmy wants to go buy a car, is the dealership going to give Timmy, approve his credit to be on that vehicle by himself? No, he needs a surety, a cosigner. Okay? So the states signed on the Constitution as sureties, saying, yes, we will back the debt of the United States. Okay? So in 1789, with the signing and the completion of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, you had a security instrument for which the debt of the United States was now attached to. Okay? That debt, we basically went into what's known as an international bankruptcy at that point. Since we didn't pay the debt, the national government went to the UK, the King of England, and said, will you buy this debt? The King of England said, sure, we'll back your debt, we'll pay your creditors. And in exchange, they took legal title over the national government's property. Okay, so since 1789, you've basically, in 1789, the national government lost its sovereignty. So we were a republic for 7 years, 1782 to 1789. Yeah?
But does that only count for Washington, D.C. and federally owned territories as opposed to the sovereign states?
At the time it did. We'll get into the sovereign states dishonor and bankruptcy.
That's why it's District of Columbia.
Yep.
Columbia is the king of the ocean, et cetera, all the songs that come out of England. So that was
Yep.
the question. So the territory, the federal national government, which is Washington, D.C., post office, military bases, things like that?
Yes.
Okay, right.
Okay. So the term for an international bankruptcy is 70 years. Okay. So 70 years after 1789, we get into the year 1859. Does anyone know what happened in 1859?
Civil War.
Civil War. Okay. The reason for the Civil War, the real reason. Okay. Slavery was already on its way out. For those of you who know and know international treaty and what was going on around the world at the time, it had already been outlawed internationally. So basically, America was in the process of following suit. But it was, at the end of the bankruptcy, the debt is due. Okay? And the states signed on as sureties on the Constitution saying they would pay the debt. Okay? So King of England, through his bankers and Rothschild's Bank of France, basically said, okay, debt's due. You states said you'd be surety. We want our money. And the southern states, or the northern states, went to the southern states and said, basically, you guys have all the money. You have all the gold. You have all the cotton. You have all the resources. You have all the wealth. The material wealth of our nation was pretty much wrapped up in the South. And the South said, yeah, no, we're not going to pay the debt. We're going to start our own country. And because of their dishonor with the international bankers, it was now up to the North through, or up, it was the will of the creditors to get the debt paid or to take sureties for the debt. So, basically, we fight a war, end of the war. What gets resolved is now the states have lost their sovereignty because the states refusing to pay their debt to the creditors started another 70-year process, another bankruptcy. Okay, we didn't pay our old bankruptcy, so now we're going into another bankruptcy, except this time they're going to take away something else. The first bankruptcy, they took away the nation's sovereignty. They took that away because of how? Because the national government no longer could control its property. Whoever holds legal title controls the property. Okay, but now the states were in dishonor. So the international creditors were now taking control of the state's property. Okay? So the states no longer have their sovereignty because they don't control their property. That's the only thing that distinguishes a sovereign from someone who is not a sovereign. If you're a debtor, you're not sovereign. Creditor controls. Okay?
Sorry, did you skip over 1812 and 1811 on purpose?
I could talk about 1812, but it wasn't. Right now I'm doing the bankruptcy cycles.
Got it.
We'll talk about that. That's a good one too because of the War of 1812.
Well, it was just the way it was explained to me, how you explained it was that was kind of the foundation of the next thing that was going to happen.
Well, the War of 1812 was, okay, remember we had the Constitution in 1789.
Right.
And in 1791, Alexander Hamilton created the Bank of the United States. Bank of the United States is where the securities were being held. So basically the international creditors wanting a guarantee of payment said, okay, you hold your securities in this Bank of the United States and we're all good. Okay? The Bank of the United States had a 20-year charter. So fast forward 20 years, 1811, and Congress decided, no, we're not going to renew the Bank of the United States. We're going to get rid of it. Okay, it wasn't a real popular thing anyways. Again, pissed off the creditors. Creditors basically, at that point, said, no, you don't, and they sent their troops in. So we had British troops on American soil, and they burned the White House and took possession of all the federal courts. Now, why would they take possession of the federal courts? That's where the titles are. They're taking control of the titles. Okay, as long as they control the property, that's all they care about. So after they burned the White House and took control of the property, we decided we'd renew the Bank of the United States, and they left. Okay, so 1859, second bankruptcy, states lose their sovereignty. Fast forward 70 years, 1929. What happened in 1929? Stock market crashed. Okay, what happened in 1929? The debt became due. Actually, let's go back 20 years before that because they were already in preparation. Has anyone ever heard of the Federal Reserve Amendment and the Income Tax Amendment and Jekyll Island? Okay. In Jekyll Island, the international bankers, along with the Secretary of Treasury, got together in 1909 and said, okay, how are we going to handle this? In 20 years, this debt is due, and we don't have the money to pay it. So, what are we going to do? And they came up with the Federal Reserve System. Okay? And the Federal Reserve System and the tax collectors. Does anyone know like the stories of, let me think, actually, let's go back to the Bible. In the Bible, who were the tax collectors for Rome? Were they the Romans or were they the people of the territory that they had taken control of? The people of the territories, right. Now, so the tax collectors, even though they're working for a foreign power, they are your people. You don't send in foreign tax collectors, okay? So the IRS, even though it's made up of U.S. citizens, is working for a foreign power, okay? What do taxes go to? What does your income tax pay?
Interest on the debt, interest on the national debt.
Does it pay for the operations of government? No, it does not pay for the operations of government. It's going to the creditors. Creditors get the tax. Okay? So 1929 rolls around and bankruptcy's due and we don't pay. We go into another dishonor. This time,
How much money are we talking about? I mean, like I said, look, your monthly payment is $755 billion.
the first, I believe the first bankruptcy, 1789, it was around 13 million. Back then, which probably was a lot more than 13 million now.
Like,
The creditors got their payment. The creditors for the Revolutionary War got paid by the Rothschild Bank of France, okay, Bank of Paris. So Rothschild paid the creditors, but now Rothschild had a security interest in the national government, okay? So that's basically what went down then. I don't know the amount and what it was up to the Civil War.
It's the buy-in to the Federal Reserve System was $500 million at that time.
Okay, so that's in 1913.
Because the discussion has been now, which has been brought up by Ron Paul, when the bankruptcy occurred the last time, there were people seriously on the inside saying we could buy out of the Federal Reserve System for the same $500 million. And there's a serious discussion going on behind the scenes as to whether or not that would happen. If that was to happen, every international bank would collapse and would cause world chaos.
Yeah, and we don't want that.
So people behind the scenes said, we're not going to do it right now, but there's serious talk about them maybe doing it. So.
Yeah, you won't see the Federal Reserve System go anywhere unless it changes its name. That's all that'll happen. It's not going anywhere. It's the only way the creditors have a security is through the Federal Reserve. Okay, so 1929, they had already taken the state sovereignty. They had already taken the national government sovereignty. Whose sovereignty did they take in 1929? The people. And how was that demonstrated? Well, Social Security came around in 1933. Confiscation of all the gold and silver and all legal title. Up until 1933, you could hold legal title on your property. It was called alloidial title. If you used gold to purchase your property, the property was yours. You had control over the property. But now, because the people are in dishonor and the people are bankrupt, they no longer control their property. Now, all this history that we're going through, I'm not giving this to you to say it's bad or it's good. It's just what is. And it's actually good, believe it or not. I know this infuriates a lot of people to hear that how things actually work, but I'm here to tell you that everything's been set up this way for your benefit, okay? And when you understand how to be a creditor in that system, you'll see how powerful it is. That our old system of law, being in the Republic, being under common law, being under execution of law, is not a good place to be. It's much more destructive. Okay?
Can you explain alloidial title?
Alloidial title is basically, remember we talked about how title was split into equitable title, legal title? Alloidial title is one and the same. Legal and equitable are no different. It's one title.
It gives you sovereignty over the land. It's in the California State Constitution under mining title, as an example, because you can control what's underneath the land, what's above it, but it also means you don't come under codes, covenants. If you want to build a garage or an extension on your property, you got to go through commissions and whatever else because they control your property.
Right.
And it was actually written into the California State Constitution because miners would work a piece of property, go into the bank and say, hey, Eureka, I got a bunch of gold, and then the creditors would come take the property away. So alloidial title was written into the California State Constitution, but good luck filing an alloidial title on your property because it's almost impossible.
Right. Okay?
So it gives you total control and sovereignty, right, Brandon?
Yes, it gives you control. That's basically a creditor controls. Plain and simple. If you control, you have legal title. Whether you've got a document or not, If you control the property, you have legal title, you are sovereign, the property is sovereign, okay?
Would having a little title on your property mean they couldn't charge you, say, property taxes? Or
You wouldn't be on the grid. If you took your grant deed, accepted it for value, and gave it back to the county, you'd be removed from the assessor's parcel numbering system. Your property is no longer on the grid. There's no longer a property tax on that property. Now, I'm not saying anybody go and do that, because you need to be responsible for the property. That means bonding for sewage, bonding the police department, the fire department, any benefits and privileges that your property receives, you now become responsible for. You are paying the property tax because the state or the county took responsibility for those things. Okay?
Is that like common law, or what kind of law is that?
Is what?
You know, when we receive benefits and everything, like...
It is the current common law, but common law now is admiralty.
Yeah, when you talk about years and what happens, can you talk about the law that everyone is subject to, for the land, whether there's common law, admiralty law?
You're not subject to anything except by volunteering and by agreement. Okay, when you lost your sovereignty and your ability to pay your bills, they actually gave you something in exchange. And every time they take something, they have to give you something of equal or greater value, otherwise they're committing a crime. And what they gave you in 1933 was everyone over here in jurisdiction A now has an exemption. You're a creditor, okay? Now, from the perspective of jurisdiction B, you're a debtor. Okay, here I'll do a little breakdown of the public trust and the private trust. Maybe blue would be easier to see. Okay. That's not too good. Anyone familiar with trusts in here? Okay. For those of you who are not familiar with trusts, let me give you this sweet and simple. A trust has basically 4 essential parts: a grantor, a trustee, a beneficiary, and res, which is the thing of the trust, okay? Or the property.
Could you say it one more time?
Grantor, trustee, beneficiary, which are the 3 positions in a trust, and the res, or the property of the trust. Corpus is another word for it. Okay. So, we'll call this up here at the top, we'll call this the private trust. And we'll call this trust down here on the bottom, we'll call this the public trust. Okay. So in 1933, they took your title. Not only that, not only did they take title to your land and take away your ability to pay your debts with real money, but they also took title to something else, your body.
Right.
Okay? And that was done through a certificate of title known as a birth certificate. Okay? That birth certificate is the title to your body. Okay? Now you can take legal title of your body back. They were only doing it to give you a benefit. Like, you're basically, based on their perspective, you're a bunch of you're a bunch of irresponsible people. That's how they look at it. Yeah. So if you want to be irresponsible, we'll let you be irresponsible. But what we're going to do is we're going to put you into this trust here so that we control these irresponsible slaves on the plantation. Okay? So, this is the grantor. This is the trustee. This is the beneficiary. And same down here. Grantor, trustee, beneficiary. Okay. Grantor of the private trust is living men and women. Okay? The trustee of the private trust is a foreign situs trust that is created and evidenced by the birth certificate. We'll get into that in a minute, how the birth certificate works and how it works with titles and everything. So there's a foreign situs trust that was established with your birth certificate. Okay? And when I say foreign, I mean foreign to jurisdiction B, foreign to the democracy. In order for them to create this government on top of a government, they had to first recognize the people over here and say, hey, you're the source of all the energy. You're the source of all the production. So we need to have a legal identity for you in jurisdiction A. Okay? Remember, jurisdiction A is the private or the republic. So that is a legal entity. Okay? And that legal entity we'll call, a lot of people like to call it the straw man. I'll just call it the private trust. Or the, no, that's not good because we're talking about trust here. We'll call it the foreign situs trust. Well, there's two different straw men, so I don't want to call it a straw man yet. Okay, so we'll call it a foreign situs trust. The trustee is a foreign situs trust. Okay. The beneficiaries of the private trust, yes?
I'm not real clear on your definition yet of a foreign situs trust.
A foreign situs trust is an entity that is foreign from jurisdiction B, from the democracy.
So it's just a separation.
Yes. Okay. It's the legal identity that's on your birth certificate. Typically, the birth certificate will be in upper and lower case for your name.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so it's a separate legal identity from the U.S. citizen that gets created. Okay. Beneficiaries of the private trust are the public trust, public entities, the government, U.S. citizens, corporations. Those are the beneficiaries of the private trust. Okay. Down here in the public trust, the grantor is a position that kind of weighs. You're either the grantor or someone steps up to be a grantor. There is no designated grantor. Trustees of the public trust are public officials, judges, attorneys, any government agents of any kind. Beneficiaries, debtors, of the public trust are the people. These guys.
Beneficiary, what's the benefit?
You get the benefit of what the corporations are doing for you.
Okay, corporation meaning the government.
Yeah. Trustees, the public trust is the government. That's jurisdiction B, right? Jurisdiction B down here, jurisdiction A up here. And notice how it's a mere reflection of what's going on up here. Okay? So, who controls a trust?
The trustee.
Trustee. Who determines the duties of the trustee? The maker, the grantor. Okay? So, if the grantor creates the trust, trustee controls the trust. Okay, so this guy here was born into the world, and the law form that we're all operating under is known as admiralty. Is everyone familiar with that term? Admiralty, maritime law. The reason we're in admiralty is because admiralty has grace and mercy. It's the superior law form. Okay? Common law is execution on the law. Okay? If you go back to the Bible, in Genesis, actually, they talk about, or God gives Adam and Eve in the non-commercial zone, he gives them the law, which is everything is yours. There's no commercial transactions here. There is no payment. You take what you take. You give what you give. And, yeah.
When you listed the 5 law firms to start out with, you didn't list Admiralty on there? So
Admiralty falls into, it can be commercial law, and it could be common law. Because currently the common law is Admiralty. Okay? Admiralty is the law of vessels. And back in the 1600s, they got all existential on the law, and they said, yeah, we're all vessels in the sea of space. Okay, so Lord Mansfield in 1753 decided, yep, Admiralty is now part of the common law. Okay, so in order for you to operate in Admiralty, they need to give you a berth, a B-E-R-T-H, a berth in Admiralty. And that berth, your mom filled out an application for a birth certificate. Application had your little feet print on it and everything. So what she does is she fills out the application, and they approve you. Yeah?
Is that birth application, is birth spelled B-E-R-T-H on that?
It's spelled B-I-R-T-H,
Okay.
but it's the same meaning. It's just like a birth. What's that?
The birth in Edmonton law is spelled with an I.
Yeah. No. Just on the birth certificate.
Got it.
Okay. if they spelled it with an E, they'd be giving away what's going on. Yeah. So you get a birth certificate. Birth certificate is your foreign situs trust. Okay, it's what gives you the ability to operate with all the other vessels. If your vessel doesn't have a berth in commerce, then your vessel can't interact with other vessels. Okay, but this vessel is foreign to jurisdiction B, or the democracy. Okay? So, they created the birth certificate, and then a corporation came along. This corporation, which was established around 1859, known as the Federal Corporation. And the Federal Corporation said, hey, we've got all these benefits and privileges for our members. We call those members U.S. citizens. Okay? They offered you benefits and privileges. These benefits and privileges came across came in the form of your Social Security or your social insurance contract. Okay? When you signed on for social insurance, you said, yeah, I'll take your benefits and privileges. And created another trust. This trust we'll call a Sestike trust, an implied trust. Okay? And this implied trust now gives you benefits and privileges. Not only are you able to interact with all the other trusts out here, but you get the benefits and privileges of being a debtor in the United States, which is you don't have to pay. There is no gold anyways. There is no real money for you to pay for anything. But the benefits and privileges are you get to operate in commerce, you get to go to jail to pay your debts and things like that. Okay? In the common law, there is no debtor's prison. Okay? But in commerce, in Admiralty, there's debtor's prison. And so your benefit is to serve jail time to pay your debt. That's one of the benefits of working in commerce. If we were in common law, okay, not in commercial law, what would the rights of the creditor be if you owed me a debt? I could force you to work off that debt with me. That's how common law works. It's execution on the law. Okay? Actually, let me get back to the story I was telling about the Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Garden of Eden was a non-commercial zone. Okay? There was no money. But as soon as Adam and Eve broke the law, and God told them beforehand, if you touch the fruit, you will surely die. He gave, here's the restriction, here's the punishment. Okay. Did he kill Adam and Eve when they touched the fruit? No. He switched law forms on them. He switched to Admiralty. He switched to grace and mercy. He's like, okay, I know I said I was going to kill you, but instead, we're going to go into a commercial law form. We're no longer in law of the land. Okay, and in this commercial law form, you get to discharge your debts. Meaning, I get to put my debts off into the future. Okay? So he basically said, okay, here's the they came to him with, what did they put on? When they, after fig leaves. So they said, okay, we're going to pay with fig leaves. God says, no, no, no. Creditor determines the money.
Was Adam and Eve operating in bankruptcy at that time?
Not yet. They were entering bankruptcy at this time. Okay? So Adam and Eve, because basically if you don't pay your debt, you're in bankruptcy. Okay? And Adam and Eve were given the ability to discharge. Now, discharge does not eliminate the debt. It puts it off into some future time. Okay? So the money that the creditor chose, God, he said, no, 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 the money is going to be the blood of animals. Okay? Sacrifice of animals, that's going to be the money. That's how you're going to pay your debt to me. Okay? So he gave them the ability to discharge. Okay? So they move into the commercial zone, and from that point forward, we've been operating under, or from that point until Jesus, they operated under what we would call discharge. Okay? Jesus came up with a new concept, or at least those who wrote the religion based on him did, and this new concept was prepayment. You ever heard Jesus died for your sins? Sins are debts. He prepaid your debt. So we're not putting the debt off into the future now. We're prepaying it. We're saying the debt's already paid. Okay? So this new system of law, we have redemption, right? We talk about redemption in the New Testament. Well, this is commercial redemption. And that's what they were giving you with this New Testament, this new contract. Okay, we're no longer operating under execution of the law. We're going to operate in a commercial zone where there's prepayment of all debts. Okay? So in 1933, remember I said they can't take anything without giving you something of equal or greater value? So what they gave you was the ability to set off your debts. Okay? You no longer, the debts are now prepaid. Okay? Everything in your society is prepaid. Where does money come from? Does anyone know?
Printing press.
Whatever an individual and then a person contract, or say his money, or
Close.
Energy. It's a trade.
Your signature. Your signature creates all the money. If there aren't, since all corporations are dead things, they're all vessels with all capital names. Everyone knows that, right? Anything with a name in all capital letters is a vessel. Okay. All corporations are vessels. They're dead. They don't have the ability to create money. Only you do. Okay? So when you sign a promissory note for your house, you're creating money. Those funds actually go straight to an escrow account. Okay? You actually paid for the house. Now, the bank in their infinite greed don't tell you that. But if you knew as a creditor how to interact with the IRS, you could discharge that debt. Because, yeah.
do you offset it or discharge it?
You discharge it. You can set it off, but there's no debt. See, you paid for it. They tricked you into a new contract, which basically says, yeah, I'm going to pay you money, even though I just paid you all the money. And the wisdom in this system is that if you're a debtor, you're going to have to work harder and harder, right? Now, the system is a balance, okay? If everyone was responsible and everyone was a creditor, there would be no money. We would all walk around and just sign our names to pay for things. But the fact is they're debtors and people who refuse to take responsibility. And in that system, you can't tell, okay, you debtors, this is how things work, and then we come over here and say, okay, creditors, this is really how things work. Okay, we just have to assume you're all debtors. Okay, and if you're all debtors, then you're under the slave system. You're controlled. Title to your body is being held. Okay? Yeah.
Let me fill in a quick blank here and just ask you a question on it, because this is what made it really clear to me when we were going through all this whole process. If you guys want to look up, it's House Joint Resolution, or HJR 192 of June 5th, 1933. That's when they took away the right to that's when they took away everybody's rights. That's when they said you can't own gold or silver. But what they did, and this is really cool because it's Metaphysics 101, they changed the money system to the faith, spirit, and energy of the people of the United States, which means...
Yeah, that's what they gave you in return.
The system is the only thing of value is the earth. All of you are movable bags of earth and water, okay? And faith...
Untaxed water.
Untaxed water. Faith means you believe a monetary system exists. The spirit means you think up ways to create value. And the energy is that you move your arms and legs around to create the value in the society.
Right.
That's the law. That's in the law. So they changed it to a metaphysical faith, energy, spirit concept.
Yeah.
June 5th, 1933. And they said, you don't get to own gold or silver anymore. But now we're going to, I think, in some ways, a higher plane or higher level, faith, energy, spirit.
Yeah, no, we are. Like I said, none of the things that have happened are bad.
But that's
it's
also,
all good.
Isn't that what that's what allows you? Because you made this point the other night when we had dinner. You have the credit as the creditor. The bank stands in your way. Why don't you just explain that you explained the other day?
Yeah, well, they assume you're a debtor. Okay? And in the world of debtors, we've put a financial intermediary in place.
Okay.
And that's the banks. The banks block you from your credit. You sign it and you create it. If you endorse a check, you created the funds for that check.
It's allowed them to create it out of nothing, right?
Exactly. You've authorized the bank to create funds out of nothing. Okay?
That's why I'll never deposit without a signature.
Yeah. You couldn't deposit anything if there wasn't a signature on there. Okay? Except for a money order. But a money order is actually backed by gold. I don't know if you guys knew that.
People should probably take out the magnifying glass and take a look at the line. The bottom line that you sign on every check is a series of words.
Yeah.
says
Authorized.
Authorized signature, security.
You're an authorized representative of the bank. It's the bank's money. As soon as you deposed yourself of the funds by depositing it in an account, you gave them possession of the money. It's their money now. But you're the one authorizing the creation of the money. Without you, the bank couldn't create money. The Federal Reserve can't create money. The government can't create
So you're
money.
the grantor or the trustee, and they're the beneficiary?
In a deposit situation?
Yeah.
In a deposit situation, you're the grantor. They take on the role as trustee. You're a trustee because when you sign a check, you're an authorized representative of the bank. You're working for the bank whenever you sign your check.
So when you take a check in for somebody else, and they stamp it for deposit only, no one signed it, what's the deal there? How's that work?
That's an endorsement. It's a corporate endorsement.
Didn't you say that we're not allowed to own gold at a certain date? So how
1974 is
can we have this kind of contract where gold can be the reimbursement you get for like a money? How can that work if we can't take gold or own gold?
Right, because the post office, the one who issues the money, or and this is only postal money orders, by the way. The post office actually operates in jurisdiction A and B. Actually, the post office is in jurisdiction A. The postal service is in jurisdiction B. Okay?
Say that one again.
The post office, which was created before the government, exists in jurisdiction A, the republic. The postal service exists in jurisdiction B, the democracy.
My understanding is the post office is no longer a government agency.
They're both.
The post office is not part of the democracy, but the postal service is.
Okay. So they do both functions.
They operate in the private and the public. They're the only agency that has that ability.
When was the Postal Service created?
When was the what?
Postal Service created
Probably about 1933, 1935.
in one of those acts?
Yeah. FDR.
You mean the corporate postal service?
Yeah.
This constitutional one was Ben Franklin.
That was post office.
First office, okay. All right.
Yep. Post office was created by Benjamin Franklin, first Postmaster General. That's why he's on the $100 stamp.
When does all this UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, come into play?
It's in play all around you. That's what's going on.
Is that embedded in Admiralty?
It is. You can't really separate them. UCC is really just the laws that the states have adopted for interacting in international commerce. Remember when we had our list of law forms? And commercial law was right there under natural law? Well, that's where if you're operating up there in commercial law, for you to perfect a security interest, they had to adopt laws that as a foreign creditor, I need to be able to come into your democracy and take control of property in your democracy. That's why they had to adopt the UCC. The UCC is for us, the foreign creditors, for you to come in and say, yep, that's mine, and nobody has a superior claim to me. Okay? Basically, the concepts of commerce and where we're going to go in future classes is there's like 3 elements to commerce. And there's the claim. There's the claim or title. Okay? That's one thing we need to learn how to do, is perfect our claims. Okay? Once you've learned how to perfect a claim and to get title, well, then we move into the different procedures. Okay? But realistically, without a claim, without title, the UCC itself, like people who use the UCC1 financing statement, is just a public notice. If you don't have a claim from jurisdiction A, it's pointless for you to do a UCC1 filing. Okay, and those of you who aren't familiar with UCC, UCC1 financing statement is a way for a foreign creditor to perfect or to put into the public record their security interest. So, for instance, I have a security interest on a piece of real property. I will go down to the county, because it's the county records that are involved with real property, and I will file a UCC1 financing statement that lists the real property as collateral, has me as the creditor, and whoever the grantor or the trustor or the owner-debtor as the debtor on the UCC1 financing statement. So that's the 3 essential elements on a financing statement: creditor or secured party, debtor, and collateral. And it's just a public notice. It's your claim that has all the weight. But your claim you never put into public. Do we have to stop? Okay. All right, we need to switch the tape out.
I've got about 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 more minutes, and then we're switching the tape. Okay, gotcha. All right, so that's one of the things we'll be going over in here, is not today, because we just want to get the foundation out, but you need to learn how to perfect a claim. That is the most important part of operating in commerce. Once you know how to get a claim, your power is unlimited. That's why the philosophy behind this particular class is how to be a creditor, because as a creditor you control. How many people feel that the government and the current economic system is deficient? And how many of you take responsibility for that? Okay, those are your creditors. Okay? Those who take responsibility for it, because you have unlimited power in this commercial system. You really can do whatever you want as long as it's, not hurting or damaging anyone else.
But then they wouldn't be a creditor if they were.
Exactly. If you're hurting or damaging, you're not really a creditor.
On a dollar bill, it has the people's signatures, the Secretary of Treasury or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does his, or in the future her signature, does that create the money? Would that not be a currency without a signature on that?
It's not really currency. A Federal Reserve note. A Federal Reserve note is remember we're in Admiralty, it's a negotiable instrument, okay? And it's actually an improper negotiable instrument. If you go through the negotiable instrument law, it's not sufficient to qualify as a negotiable instrument. But remember over here, They said, hey, if you want to be a member of this, you get special benefits and privileges. One of those benefits and privileges is the benefit and privilege of trading that worthless paper. Okay, you get to carry this worthless paper around and you get to give it to other people, even though it's not a proper negotiable instrument.
That would sound harmful to me,
What do you mean harmful?
trading worthless paper.
That's what you're doing.
Yeah, it sounds like a harmful act and like it wouldn't be a legal thing to do.
Why?
Because people are in good faith thinking that it's worth something and it's not.
Well, if we agree that it's worth something, doesn't that make it worth something?
Energy spirit.
Yeah.
Trading with the enemy.
Trading with the enemy. Who said that?
I like that.
That's why in jurisdiction B they can't acknowledge jurisdiction A. If jurisdiction B recognized jurisdiction A, all judges, attorneys, they'd have to be executed. No, it's no. No, they're the watchmen on the wall. They're here to help you. Believe it or not, they're here to help you. So they can't acknowledge jurisdiction A.
So we're all operating in fraud?
In some sense, but really, it's just uninformed. If you understand what you're doing, it's not really a fraud. They've made you believe that it's a republic and that the Constitution is what our laws are based on, but that's not the case. It's commercial law. Creditors make the rules. So when you walk into a court, the only thing the judge is trying to determine, are you a creditor or are you a debtor? If you're a creditor, he's going to find in your favor. If you're a debtor, he's not going to find in your favor.
What makes a creditor a debtor?
What makes a creditor a debtor? He determines by your actions, not by your words. You can't do, oh, sir, I'm a creditor. He's like, oh, you're a creditor? Perfect. You know, he's not going to find in your favor by what you say. He's going to find in your favor by how you act. A creditor is always at peace, is always bringing a solution. Not arguing. Okay, if you're arguing, you're in commercial warfare. You're a debtor. Okay? So it's all in your actions. Everything you do, the way you speak, you'll start to notice, and this is a heavy concept that we go into a lot on our weekly calls, and we'll do in this class, is being a creditor is a state of mind. And once you really get being a creditor, you'll have no fear. You won't fear anything because you'll know exactly how to interact with all those things that have made you fear. Okay. Go ahead and we'll switch it.
Contact you. And we're also going to be doing a weekly class on Thursdays. We don't have a start date for it yet, but also make sure you leave me name, address, or name, email, and phone number, because we want to do a weekly class here so we can all learn about this awesome stuff and do it the right way. So, and I will keep the store open afterwards too if people want to browse around a little bit. We might kick you out at midnight, but so I'll turn it back over to Brandon.
All right.
Thank you.
Yay.
All right. Any questions with what we've gone over so far?
Somebody had one question about why does the father sign the birth certificate?
Why doesn't he?
Yeah.
Admiralty is feminine law. We're no longer under masculine law. Now, but the father can put a claim in on his child.
Okay.
And that claim, like, did you guys hear about recently something in Texas, with the Latter-day Saints or something? And there were no birth certificates or anything on the kids, so realistically the state didn't have title to those kids. So how is it the state went in and grabbed those kids? Abandonment. In Admiralty, you have abandonment of property. If nobody puts a claim on the kids, the property's been abandoned. If the fathers would have went into the county court or the county recorder and filed a claim on the kids, the state couldn't touch those kids.
Would that be UCC1 or?
Yeah, you can do it on UCC1.
Can you do that just for your regular kids too?
Yeah. Regular kids. As opposed to the irregular kids. Yeah.
In Minnesota, there's two different birth documents. One called the certificate certificate of live birth and one is called a birth certificate. Is that true in most states, or what are you talking
I'm not familiar with how the states run it. Only one of them is a bond and goes to the Department of Commerce.
Well, Nebraska has that thing where you can just drop your kids off at the hospital and they just take them. They just take care of them. And I think they stopped it because the University of Nebraska dropped off their whole football team.
There was a woman at the Jack Smith seminar this October in Massachusetts, and she told the story about after her son was born, the governor of the state sent her a thank you letter. And it's the governor who sends in the birth certificate to the Department of Commerce. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Thanks for giving us some more credit. Because remember, it's those commercial bodies that they make the money out of.
Can you actually get to go see your real birth certificate?
No, it's a negotiable instrument. It's like trying to get the original note on your house.
So there
was one guy who's a rumor, legend, urban myth that supposedly got his original birth certificate, and it was stamped by 17 foreign banks.
Yeah, I wouldn't want it.
Yeah.
You want it where it's at, because it goes from the Department of Commerce to some international. Realistically, it doesn't have to go anywhere. It might be with the Secretary of State of California for all I know, because realistically, it doesn't have to go anywhere for them to have their security interests. It just has to be being held by their agents. The Secretary of State is under the Secretary of State of the United States, and the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Treasury, and the Attorney General expatriate their U.S. citizenship. Do you know why they do that?
No. So they can work for the foreign corps.
So they can work for the foreign corps. Okay, they have to be able to work for the creditors.
When do they repatriate?
Probably after their term. The U.S. Code. It's actually in the U.S. Code. In the U.S. Code, you'll find.
Isn't there actually, like when we're born as a birth certificate, isn't it marked for a certain price? Like it's $1 million per person?
It's a pooled account, so I wouldn't say that there's a direct value put on it. Realistically, the value would be all the property and gold that was confiscated. Divide that up by the number of people in the United States, and that's your share, plus interest, since 1933.
I heard that they bond these birth certificates, right? Or make it a security, or it's a tradable thing.
It is a bond, yes.
And is it? I heard that it's traded on a securities exchange somewhere. Is that correct?
It's not necessarily traded not on the open market. There's typically two ledgers in any corporation, and there's going to be what we would call the private ledger. And in the private ledger is where you would put assets. It would be on the asset column of someone's ledger. Some international bank, international entity, someone who's a creditor.
Brandon, the guys online requested that the questions be asked on the mic.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. If you have a question, we can pass you the mic. Any more?
I don't know if this is part of your case plan or not. Can you hear me on the internet with this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't want to talk about this is totally cool, but I'm really interested in the whole thing with Obama. And again, the question becomes whether or not he's a citizen or not a citizen. The Supreme Court didn't hear it, but after he takes the oath of office, it'll be represented to the court with a claim of supposed damages. And you said, and this has been swirling around in my mind for quite some time, that the President of the United States takes a corporate oath to the foreign corporation,
to democracy,
which means the CEO can make anybody they want. He doesn't really even have to be a citizen to be the CEO. And at the same time, he takes an oath to the republic, which he has to be a natural-born citizen under the Constitution. And
there is no more Constitution.
That makes him head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That makes him commander in chief. What the Supreme Court is saying by not upholding the Lower D'Onofrio and Byrd cases is that the Constitution isn't really in force at all, because they wouldn't uphold it.
Who's the parties? Who are the parties on the Constitution?
The states.
The states. Are you a state?
No.
If we're a creditor and you're in jurisdiction A, do you care what they do in jurisdiction B?
No. But I am interested as to how you think he's going to get away with doing it.
Yeah, he'll get away with it because it doesn't matter. The oaths don't matter. I'll tell you that. It's a democracy. And a democracy runs like a corporation. He can do whatever the hell he wants.
But he doesn't have to have power in public and private?
No, not the president. Secretary of State does.
Okay.
Remember, he's just head of the democracy. The military is the democracy. Remember, how many of you are familiar with the 213 amendments of the Constitution? The 213 amendments. Okay, there's a couple people. Okay, the first 13th amendment was no titles of nobility. Okay?
Right.
Titles of nobility are like esquire. Okay, they said no, attorneys cannot be part of this country or this government. Okay? The second 13th amendment got rid of slavery, involuntary servitude. And then they created a new government, which was the federal corporation, the democracy. And in that democracy, because it's a military democracy, if you look in the old Army manual from before 1933, a democracy was actually a very bad thing. It's a military-controlled government. Are there titles of nobility in the military? Yeah. The whole system's on rank, right? Okay? So they created a new class or a new title of nobility known as a U.S. citizen. A U.S. citizen is a title of nobility. And at that point, it was also okay for esquires to be part of the government. Okay? So we're operating, or the democracy is operating under the laws of tribunal, military tribunal. Okay, that's basically what's going on in democracy. That's why it doesn't seem to work how you think it should work. When you go into court, you're guilty. By showing up, you're guilty. The hearing in the court is your first appeal. Okay? The moment you got charged, you were guilty. Have any of you ever seen that movie with Tom Cruise and You Can't Handle the Truth? Few Good Men, that's it, Few Good Men. And remember, they made a big deal out of Tom Cruise even accusing, even asking the question if he had done this act, right? Because the act of an officer accusing is the judgment. Okay, so when an officer writes you a ticket, that's the judgment. That was your first hearing. When you show up to court, it's your first appeal. And you have a right to a hearing and to appeals. That's all you have a right to. Your first appeal is the court hearing. Then you could take it to an appellate court if it doesn't go your way. And then after that, they don't have to hear it. Okay? So basically, the democracy is run like a military tribunal. Creditors operate outside of the democracy. You cannot be a creditor inside the democracy, even though your straw man is your creditor in the democracy. Everything's backwards and mirror image in the democracy. So your U.S. citizen, that thing that from jurisdiction A, it's a debtor. But in jurisdiction B, the straw man is the creditor. And the living man, is the debtor. Okay?
So where's the straw man?
What's that?
Are we the straw man?
The straw man is a trust. It's a stack of papers. Realistically, if I call you by your name, that's not you. That's an identity, a legal identity. Okay? So no matter how you write your name or you spell your name, all uppercase, lowercase, all lowercase, hieroglyphics, however you want to write your name, it's fictional. You are not the name, you are not the title. The title is a fiction. Okay, we haven't really talked that much about fiction, but everything in commerce is fictional. Okay? Because everything interacting in commerce is dead or a vessel. Okay? So there is no positive law. Everything is through volunteering and agreement. And that's the basis of the control that you are subject to. You're only subject if you volunteer to be subject. Okay? So...
In jurisdiction B, then, if the straw man
Sorry, I forgot about the mic.
Leave one back there, he's got another.
In jurisdiction B, then if the straw man is the creditor, then shouldn't the UCC filing reflect that the straw man is the creditor?
Yes, it should, actually. Or realistically, it should be a bailiff or bailee. Should be your UCC filing. If you're filing a UCC financing statement on yourself, you would want the straw man as the creditor. Because the straw man is the creditor, right? Isn't it the straw man's account that generates all the money? I mean, realistically, you can't interact with the democracy or jurisdiction B. Only the straw man can. So you're really a trustee for the straw man. The straw man is a trust, and you're the trustee. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with like the patriot movements that are out there, and there's people who go into court and, I'm not the straw man. That's not how I write my name, all uppercase. The judge isn't stupid. He knows you're not the straw man. But guess who's responsible? The trustee. And you are the trustee. And your body, because they hold the title on it, is going to be surety for that trust. So when they haul in the vessel, remember this is admiralty law, first thing you do is arrest the vessel, bring it into court, attach it as a surety to the charges, and then make a decision. Are you a debtor or are you a creditor? And we'll go from there. If you're the creditor, you're gonna put something up that's going to release the vessel. You're going to bond it, right? If you put up a bond, there's no need for the body to be a surety. The bond covers that. Okay, that's really what they're doing when they're holding the body. The body is the bond. It's the surety for the charge. And remember, the charge is fact. The fact that there's a charge right there means you are guilty. Does anyone actually know what you're doing when you plead guilty? Or where the word guilty comes from? Gilded, it's from the Old English for gilded, which means to pay. Okay? So when you say I'm not guilty, no, first they ask you, do you understand the charges? They're not asking like, do you understand English? Hello, can you understand what I'm saying? That's not what they're asking. What they're asking you is, will you stand under these charges? Are you going to be the surety for these charges? Yes, sir, I understand these charges. Okay, how do you plead? Not guilty. You just said you were going to be responsible, now you're saying you're not going to pay. You're in contempt. Immediately, you're in contempt. Dishonor. Okay? That's actually something we need to, I guess we should go into is honor and dishonor.
But you don't say, I don't understand the charge. When the judge asks you, do you understand these charges, and you say, no, I don't understand, does that put you back into...
It puts you into being a debtor. Because now you're blocking. You're not acting as a creditor. You're not bringing a solution. You're actually delaying the judge from getting done what he needs to get done.
So then what would be the response?
Yeah, I understand. I'll stand under these.
Just take care of it.
Yeah.
Settle it.
And I plead guilty to the facts.
See, I think...
See, people get in their head that pleading guilty is something bad.
Right, that's what I was just...
You're saying, I'm paying. I'm going to plead guilty to the facts. I'm going to waive any benefits and privileges of prison. And I'm going to effect payment immediately. Because now I'm in honor. And they can't put a person in honor in jail. You've honored the agreement. You've volunteered to be surety, and as surety, you're bringing a bond. Or you're going to underwrite those charges. Okay? Anything else? Okay. Yeah.
What's the difference between surety and security?
What's the difference between surety and security?
Something is surety, but it sounds like security. Maybe putting a security.
Okay. Well, if something is secured, like a debt can be secured by collateral. Okay. And realistically, that is surety for the payment. Were the states secured or were they being sureties? It depends on really how you're using the word security. I wouldn't use it to mean surety, but a surety means that's the source of payment. The surety is, the guarantor is the surety. The surety is the guarantor. So just like when you co-sign for Little Billy to get his car, you're the surety. You're the guarantor on the loan, even though Little Billy's credit paid for it up front. Okay, anything else? Yeah.
Hey, Braden. This is all fascinating. Some of this is new to me. I say this is very fascinating. Some of this is new to me, some of it's not. But a big part of me is saying, where are we going with all of this? What practical benefit? What, what are the advantages? What follows? What does one need to learn in addition? Do we become experts in admiralty law?
Yes, you will become experts in commerce.
Right.
And by becoming an expert in commerce, you can be a creditor, and creditors control. So if the world isn't exactly like how you think it should be, well then now it's your opportunity to take responsibility, step up, and change it. That's what I'm bringing to you. The ability for us to stand for our community and to make it into the community that we want, because we have that power. We've been irresponsible. The whole world. Most of the people in the world are completely irresponsible. And if we step up and take responsibility, you won't no longer be crying to jurisdiction B for them to fix all your problems. And just like everyone was so jazzed about bringing Obama in, well, everyone was jazzed about bringing FDR in too. Okay? And they're no different. Obama's going to do the same thing. He's like, okay, you think government's the solution? All righty, here we go. More restrictions because you're going to be paying. And if you're paying, we need to figure out a way to bring that revenue in. You want us to fix it. If you're going to jurisdiction B, the public, and you're saying, fix our problems, they're like, okay, we're going to give you some more benefits, but we're going to restrict you. We're going to control even more aspects of your life now. You think they were controlling a lot up until now. Wait until this new level of bankruptcy. Because now, at 1929, 7 years later, 1999, second witness came around in 2008 with the financial collapse of 2008. And now, does anyone remember when the first vote on the bailout? Bush came to Congress and said, are the people going to foot the bill? And through the representatives, over 20-1, people said, no way, we will not bail out Wall Street. We refuse to take responsibility. We're debtors. 3 days later, he goes back before Congress and says, well, will the corporation take responsibility? I'm like, yeah. Corporation will take responsibility. No problem. It's already secured by the international bankers anyways. But the Chinese wanted to make sure they can, because now the Chinese hold a huge security interest in the United States. They wanted to be able to guarantee that security, so they wrote in their own little clause there that now the Chinese military can come into the United States to protect their property, to protect their security interest.
What's going to happen when they foreclose?
Well, they won't foreclose, probably, unless we get belligerent. It's when a nation gets belligerent that you send a military in, like what we did with Iraq. The whole Iraq war is purely commercial. If I can't protect my security interests in the country of Iraq, well then they're dishonoring the international commercial system. And if they're dishonoring the international commercial system, they're a wild card that we can't have. So we send in the military. We set up, what was the one thing they were trying to establish? Constitution, right? Wanted them to be a democracy. Because as soon as they have a constitution, the debt is guaranteed. The people are guaranteeing the debt by signing the Constitution. So that's what they want. And realistically, that's what The international bankers, the international controllers, they are bending over backwards to give you the best system possible. Believe it. It's all completely in alignment with universal law. That's why I'm not particularly religious. I don't actually belong to any religion or anything. But the Bible has multiple layers to it. One of those layers is a commercial layer. It is the entire commercial system laid out. And it's written in such a way that it's in alignment with the universal laws. You know, whether you believe in the Bible or not, I'm sure you've heard of what you put out there comes back. And when you do put something bad out there, it comes back 10 times. Okay? All those numbers in the Bible have a very specific meaning and a commercial corollary, where we get all our commercial timelines. The seven years for bankruptcy, the 70 years for an international bankruptcy, 10 days for a commercial process, 3 days for a commercial process. All those numbers are in the Bible. And it's your commercial system. And as long as they're doing it by that system, they follow the Bible to the T. They're the sons of Cain. You guys remember the story of Cain and Abel? Okay? We had our very first tax protester, Cain. He pays his taxes with vegetables. God says, that ain't money, man. I told you. Money is the blood of an animal. Cain said, I'm a farmer. And actually, let me go back in Genesis a few chapters. God went to Cain and said, will you follow my law? What did Cain say? No, I ain't going to follow your law. He went to Abel. Will you follow my law? Yes, I will follow it to a T. I will follow your law. Did Abel follow the law? No. Cain follows the law to the T. And the sons of Cain are the ones who have been put in charge of you. The sons of Cain you don't see the religious system in your courts or in your system of commerce. They say, we don't follow God's law. And then they follow it to a T. But they follow that law to a T. They follow that commercial law that's been set forth in the Bible. And when Cain, the first tax protester, refused to pay with blood, or he didn't refuse, actually. He got approached by God. God said, no, this isn't proper payment. This is like when your parents came with fig leaves and tried to pay. We're not going to accept vegetables. Cain says, okay, so you want blood. Here you go. My brother. Right? Kills his brother. He says, that's what you said. You wanted blood. So God going, okay, well, he didn't exactly dishonor, but he's using stolen funds to pay his debt, right? So as a creditor, am I supposed to just take your stolen funds as payment? No. So here, we're back. Now he takes them into admiralty, gives them some mercy and some grace, and says, we're going to put off your debt. I'm not going to kill you now. And Cain said, well, yeah, that's all good and fine, but what about Abel's family? They're going to be pissed. And they're going to be after me. And God says, no, they won't. Because if they do, I'm going to return the retribution on them 10 times. So the correlation I'm making there is that the sons of Cain reject the law of God but follow it to a T. Sons of God say they're going to follow God's law and then don't. They're in dishonor. Sons of Cain know that it's about being in honor.
What's the sign or the mark that they put on Cain?
On a Cain?
On Cain.
You also put a mark upon
Mark upon Cain. You know what the story is?
All men will hunt me.
Yeah.
And he says, because he's now an outsider.
Right. He's in jurisdiction A. He got moved from jurisdiction B into jurisdiction A. That's what happened.
And so all this falls in line with the King James Version, the approved version.
I would say it falls in line with all versions, even the Hebrew version.
why is not the system of understanding all of this imprinted into our educational system? Why is there out of the entire educational loop so that people just follow into this being worthless, irresponsible?
Who's educating you?
Well, the state is supposed to be
Public.
public.
Jurisdiction B.
Schools in session, happy kids.
Jurisdiction B is where you're getting your education,
Even
right?
private schools do it.
That's what they're jurisdiction B too. They call themselves private schools, but they're in jurisdiction B. So you're depending on jurisdiction B, which for its survival needs you to be a debtor. You think they're going to educate you to be a creditor. They would cease to exist. The fact that you depend on them for your education shows you're a debtor. You didn't get this from your parents. They didn't educate you.
I was just going to make a comment. Well, it's perfectly in line with law, which is if you're going to be it's perfectly in line with law. If you're going to be a creditor, you have to go out and get the information and be a creditor. You can't be expected to have it handed to you.
Exactly.
And you have to wake up and do it.
Exactly.
Comment.
So if we go the creditor route, if enough of us go to the creditor route, what's going to happen with the B? What do you
If everyone, no, it wouldn't always be there. If everyone was truly being a creditor, everything would be working, right? Because we wouldn't even need the Federal Reserve notes anymore. We wouldn't even need banks because we would all be giving. If everyone's giving, there's abundance and more than enough to go around. The fact is, we're not all giving. We're all living in some kind of limited state of mind that we're not coming from abundance. If we were coming from abundance, then we would take responsibility for our communities. We wouldn't say, please, government, make my community what I want it to be. Please, Mr. Police Officer, protect me. Please, Mr. Fireman, put out my fires. The fact is, we're not acting that way. And in order for the system to work, if there's a bunch of debtors, you need to keep the debtors in line. You need to keep the irresponsible people from completely destroying the system.
I guess what I'm asking is if we become creditors, do you see any repercussions from the B side on creditors? I mean, what's the
No, you control it. You control the B side. If you take all the people out of the corporations, what are the corporations going to do? Yeah. What can they do without people? Right? And if we're all loving our brother, honoring our brother, whether our brother is a policeman, whether our brother is an FBI agent, whether he's an IRS agent, whether he's a judge, whether he's an attorney, if we're honoring, do we need the corporation anymore? Remember, back in Genesis, where did we start out? Commercial-free zone. Walls protected by angels. Fact is, you're not ready for a commercial-free zone. That's the utopia everyone thinks they want. But greed puts you into the commercial zone. And as long as we're operating in the commercial zone, you're going to go by the rules of the commercial zone. Now, stepping up and being a creditor means this isn't a technology to make you above the law, although you are above their law. But realistically, to be a creditor, you need to be in honor with everyone. And if you're in honor and respecting and not coming from greed, there's no reason for them to touch you. You're making everything possible. You're the source. As fast as soon as we get the mic back there.
Can you confirm that the Supreme Court ruled that admiralty law is the law of the country?
Can I prove that the Supreme Court... Well, realistically, before the Declaration of Independence, the admiralty law was part of the common law. But actually, that may even be the reason that we had the Revolutionary War. Lord Mansfield in 1753 decided admiralty is part of the common law. Because where does, in law of the land, there's no such thing as insurance. In law of the land, there is no such thing as negotiable instruments. The fact that you're using negotiable instruments, checks, credit cards, Federal Reserve notes, you're demonstrating to them that you know you're an admiralty. And you have social insurance. See, there was no such thing as insurance until law of the sea, admiralty. And basically the reason why admiralty came to be was, okay, we're going to, send this ship off and I'm funding it, but there's no guarantee that this ship will ever come back. It could sink. The captain and his crew could just make off somewhere, some island in the middle of the Pacific. We'll never see him again. So we have to be able to insure the vessel. And then negotiable instruments in international banking. We needed to be able to we didn't want to have to carry our gold with us everywhere we went to purchase something. Negotiable instruments are law of the sea. So you've been using it, and it's been being used. And it's not a bad thing. Like I said, it has grace and mercy. Law of the land doesn't. You don't want them executing on the law, believe me. You do not want that.
Can you talk about dishonor and honor?
Yes. Okay, everything in commerce comes from offers and acceptances. Okay? Let's go back to the traffic ticket. Cop pulls you over, writes you a ticket. That's an offer. Okay? Now, there's 3 paths, I guess you could take. You can accept it. You can refuse it. Or you can do nothing. But maxim of law, doing nothing is dishonor. Okay? So, accepting and paying is the only way to be honorable with any offer. Anything else is a dishonor. Even a conditional acceptance in most cases is a dishonor. Okay? So, I mean, we could take any situation. Let's say you've got felony charges against you in court, which could lead to jail time. Okay? The charge is the offer. And the judge, in his private folder, not the public record, but the private record that's held in judges' chambers, has the charging instrument. It's a negotiable instrument with someone's signature on it, charging you. It's actually, if it's a traffic case, it's the ticket. Remember, the cop gave you a copy. He didn't give you the original. He gave you a copy. The original is the charging instrument. That is in the judge's folder. Okay? Now, do you understand the charges? Yes, I understand the charges. I will be surety for this. How do you plead? How are you going to pay? I'm going to pay. Gilded. Okay? If I do anything else, I'm in dishonor. Okay? A creditor is always in honor with all of his transactions. If you say something, you do it. That's being in honor. Being your word is being in honor. Did that answer it? Okay.
So what if you're wrongly or falsely accused in a situation?
Right.
Where's the honorable thing there?
Pay it. What do you mean wrongfully?
You weren't speeding, or you didn't, make a wrong turn as being charged by the officer.
What did you do in the initial hearing? You accepted. You agreed.
He says you're not pleading.
That's your second hearing. That's your appeal.
No, when he asks you something, he says you're not admitting guilt. This is just a promise to appear.
Because you can't be gilded until you show up to court, right? Until you send in your payment. Then you've admitted.
And you're saying the only honorable thing is to accept his offer. So even if he's wrong,
Yeah.
you just have to say, hey.
Officer's word. Officer's word. Remember, just like Tom Cruise, As soon as he states it, it's truth.
He's not, but the officer's not acting in honor.
From his perspective, he is. He thinks you were speeding.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but it's a creditor isn't going to charge his brother. Okay? So remember we were talking about offer and acceptance and being in honor. If you charge your brother, then you're in commercial warfare. Let them charge you all day long. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. Let them charge you and pay it. They've given you this great thing. When they took away your right to property, they gave you something so much more valuable, which was the ability to discharge and to set off with your signature.
What about accept and redraft?
Accept and redraft? What do you mean by redraft?
Would that still be conditional?
It depends on what you mean by redraft. If you accept it and the terms of your payment carry something, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a reoffer or a redraft. You're saying, okay, I accept your charges, here's the payment. And the payment itself comes with its own terms and conditions. It's a new contract.
So maybe here's the disconnect here that I'm not getting. First off, you're saying that guilty and not guilty is gilded or not gilded. Is that a Black's Law definition? Because I'm under the impression that it's guile.
Remember, Black's Law is all jurisdiction B. That's all you're going to see in Black's Law.
Filled with guile, are you guilty when you committed the crime, or were you not guilty and you committed the crime?
Why is it they have you plead not guilty instead of innocent?
Again, because it goes towards intent. If you hit somebody in the back and they fall down the stairs, were you filled with guile and you shoved them down the stairs, or were you not filled with guile when you hit the person in the back?
If they made the charge, did you do it? Whether you did it or not, if the charge exists.
Okay, and then so that's question one. The disconnect seems to be,
okay,
do you accept their charges based upon proof of claim? And say,
no.
I
That's
based upon proof of claim.
That's argument. Okay, here just to give you guys an idea of how.
People are confused.
No, I do. But I'm gonna try to alleviate that confusion right now.
You killed OJ's wife, or something like that, or you killed so and so.
Okay, I'll try to give you some perspective on jurisdiction B. Jurisdiction B is Disneyland. Okay, the facts are on the moon. They mean nothing. Elephants fly. And there's fairies and fairy dust and, okay? Disneyland is not the place for facts. Okay? Facts don't exist in Disneyland. It's fictional. So, yeah, you may not be guilty because you were driving 70 in a 70-mile-an-hour zone, but the facts are on the moon. Fact is, you got charged. That's all that matters. You got charged. Doesn't matter if you did it or not.
Yes, but you could get false
I
charges.
you bring up the word controversy and what it means, and we don't want to do it.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. in being in honor, in being in honor, and in being in dishonor, a controversy is created when you argue the facts. Okay? As a creditor, you will learn to establish the facts outside of jurisdiction B. See, creditors operate over in jurisdiction A. And in jurisdiction A, when you've perfected your claim, you have the facts. Okay? So you never go into jurisdiction B with an argument. If you go into jurisdiction B with an argument or create a controversy, you're in dishonor. But if you bring your private or foreign judgment from jurisdiction A and bring it into B and learn how to get it recognized in B, there's no facts in dispute. If there are no facts in dispute, there's no controversy and you're in honor.
Okay, I hardly understand that. Let's say you go to an anti-whatever rally and you get labeled as a terrorist.
Okay.
You are now labeled as a terrorist. How do you plead guilty or not guilty? How do you handle something like that?
Everything's commercial. Everything's commercial. So if I get charged with being a terrorist, I pay the penal sum. And like I've got an actual charge against me, like they brought me into court, you're a terrorist and we're going to send you to Guantanamo.
Well, you wouldn't even go to
You pay.
court. It's taken it.
Yeah, you pay it. You pay it. You pay the charge.
Leaving out the bonding process.
Yeah, I'm leaving out the details right now because there's really, we could spend weeks and weeks and weeks on the process and procedures.
Does remedy fit in here anywhere?
Yeah, this is your remedy. Your remedy is pay it.
Well, then what are our options to use for payment?
That will be.
That we'll get into in details. Bonding. You'll learn how to use negotiable instruments. You'll learn how to make the IRS your best friend. Because the IRS will do all the work for you if you fill out the right forms.
And how to bypass the banks. And
Yeah.
you're saying that they're just serving as an
Yeah,
intermediary.
exactly. Choose a new intermediary. My intermediary is the Secretary of Treasury.
So if you were actually falsely accused of some crime, maybe stealing something out of a store,
Yeah.
so
Pay it.
you could pay it, but see, there's got to be a responsibility thing in it too, because the real guilty party is going free because you're paying the rap for it. So how do you bring that person to justice?
So are you the judge? Is it your job to be the judge?
We have a moral obligation to the community, don't you?
You do, but well, if you know who's guilty, well, that's something else. You can perfect a claim against that person privately. Use jurisdiction A. It's way more powerful. You can take all his property away from him. Like if you know what you're doing in A, nobody's going to want to mess with you. Nobody's going to want to mess with you because everyone in public, all public agents, judges, attorneys, they're all bonded. Okay? If I perfect a claim over here and attach it to their bond over here and liquidate, they're not a public agent anymore. They will not be insured or bonded anymore. And they can't serve their role if they don't have their bond.
Also, as a creditor, you're looking after everybody.
Yes, you're looking after everyone's interest.
That's the way you should look at it. Is that whether you were falsely accused or not, if you have unlimited commercial energy, wouldn't you just take care of it and settle it for your brother? What do you care if you have unlimited means? You just settle it. Get rid of it.
Yeah. Coming from abundance.
Can you talk about liability? Can you talk about liability tonight?
How do you mean? In what context?
Like, what's the definition of liability? Does liability apply in your hearings where you're in the public? Or how does that affect you?
Liability.
Admiralty law.
Oh, you mean like as limited liability versus... Okay. One of your benefits and privileges in jurisdiction B is that you operate under what's known as limited liability. Okay, all corporations, that's the reason we have corporations, operate under limited liability. Okay? Limited liability means you're not fully liable. Okay? Somebody else is going to pay your debt. Or they're going to do the work for you. Okay? Full commercial liability means I'm completely liable. I am not standing on the benefits and privileges of some third party, agency, government, corporation, or anything of the like. I'm standing in my own right, completely liable. You can only be fully liable in jurisdiction A. Jurisdiction B, everything is limited liability. That's why the judge is bonded. If he wasn't bonded, I could drag him out of the court myself and hang him under my own system of law. But he's operating under the benefit and privilege of being in limited liability. So really, I can't touch him. I can only touch his bond. Okay? Does that make sense? All right, anything else? I think maybe we'll go into its title a little more? Yeah. Okay. Alrighty. Documents of title.
I have a question, just
Yeah.
going back to before the break, you talked about claims.
We had elements of commerce.
Elements of commerce.
You just talked about perfecting claims in commerce.
Mhm.
You started to say there's 3 types of claims, I think, but you never, we got.
Actually, we're going into that now.
Okay.
We're starting with claims, which are titles kind of fall into claims. Okay. All right. So we talked about legal title and equitable title, right? Okay. In commerce, let's say I walk into a store, okay? Actually, maybe we should go into the prepaid account before we go into title. Let's do that. This kind of works together. If I go into a store and I take Federal Reserve notes out of my pocket and a can of soup from the shelf, I put the can of soup to give it to the check clerk, give them my funds, what do they give me in return?
Receipt.
A receipt. Receipt is your document of title. Okay? You have title to that can of beans now, or soup, whatever it was. Okay? So you have title to the can of soup. If the can of soup is damaged and you want to take it back to get your Federal Reserve notes back, what must you have? Receipt. The title. Okay? Document of title, or a certificate of title, is issued by the legal title holder. Okay? If I hold the legal title, I issue to the party with equitable interest, I'll issue them a certificate of title, which has their name on it showing they're the beneficiary. They're the owner-operator. Okay? But they do not have legal title. Okay? It's a trust. Title itself is a trust. Okay? If you have equitable title, you're the beneficiary of the trust. If you have legal title, you're the trustee. Okay? In a trust, you can be the grantor and the trustee. You can be the grantor and the beneficiary. But you can't be the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. That ain't a trust. It's a one-man corporation. Okay? Unless there are multiple beneficiaries. Then you can be the grantor, the trustee, and one of the beneficiaries. Okay? So in the case of title, if you're the beneficiary because you've been issued the certificate of title, and you're the grantor, the one who put in the commercial energy, the trustee is the one who holds legal title. Now, does anyone know how to reverse a trust? If you are the grantor and the beneficiary, and the state is the trustee, they issue you a certificate of title, right? Let's go to the example of your car. Okay? You were the original grantor. You're the one who went to the state. You asked them. You said, here's my application. I want to register my car. They go, okay, we'll take legal title to your car. Here's your certificate of title showing you're the beneficiary. Okay? If I take that certificate and I change my mind, I say, you know what? I want to be the trustee. I want to have legal title. I want to be in charge of this trust. All I do is do the same thing they did to me. Accept it for value, return it to them, and now I've reversed the trust. I've certified it to them. See, initially they certified it to me because they're the legal title holder. But because I've got commercial energy, I can recertify it, give it to them, and now I've reversed the trust. Now they're the beneficial title holder, and I'm the trustee.
What am I returning?
The certificate.
You taught them not to actually go out and do that.
Yeah, no, I did earlier. I did earlier. Don't do anything unless you know what you're doing. Same with the title on a house. Title on a house is the grant deed, right? Grant deed is issued by who? Who certifies you a copy of the grant deed? County. County holds legal title on your property. Okay? You go down to the county and say, can I get a certified copy of that grant deed? You go, sure. $10, please. Here's your certified copy. I take that certified copy, recertify it back to them, say, yeah, I've just reversed it. I'm going to take legal title to this. Same thing with the driver's license. Driver's license is a trust. Same thing with any document of title that you get issued, the document of title gets issued to you, you reverse it by endorsing it and returning it.
Including the birth certificate.
Including the birth certificate. So the first step in being a creditor is take legal title to the body. Take legal title to the trust that was established on your behalf. Okay? That's the first thing you need to do. Nobody's a creditor unless you control the trust. You can't be a beneficiary out of control and be a creditor. Creditor has to maintain sovereignty. To maintain sovereignty, you've got to maintain control. Nobody's taken away your sovereignty. You voluntarily gave it up.
I don't quite understand how you gave. I don't understand how you gave up sovereignty because it happened when you were born and unable to write or understand.
Did your mom voluntarily fill out the application?
So my mother, as what would you call that?
Fiduciary.
Oh, she's a fiduciary
Yeah.
instead of a
Trustee.
Okay, she did it for me, and that's still considered voluntary.
Yeah,
on my part.
until you're 21, you're considered incompetent anyways. So
Sometimes after.
Yeah.
most people after too. But they basically, until you reach 21, when you're 21, you have the option of reversing all your trusts. Okay? You could do it before, but you'd have to, actually be responsible.
Why 21 and not 18?
18 is bondage. 18 is, notice how you can die for your country at 18, but you can't drink because you're not responsible. 18 is not it used to be 21 was the age of responsibility. Actually, the biblical number, 21 is a biblical number, represents responsibility. 18 represents bondage.
But you can vote.
You can vote in jurisdiction B.
In bondage.
In bondage.
So as a parent, if you have a minor,
Yes.
And you've given away the title to that body, can you go back and reverse that as a parent of a minor?
Why would you?
Well, you're saying the first thing to becoming a creditor is...
So you're making your kid into a creditor?
Yeah.
Can they be a creditor?
I don't know, can they? I mean, is it
They'd have to understand commerce to the degree of acting as a creditor.
We'll say they're 18.
Yeah, well, they can do it themselves then. You wouldn't do it for them.
Yeah, creditors take responsibility.
Yeah, you're trying to be a creditor for your kid. That doesn't really make
Well, I'm
sense.
trying to emancipate them, and I thought all this, they couldn't do anything until they're 21.
They can do it when they're 18. Realistically, they can do it when they're 16. But are they taking responsibility for it? They have to take the birth certificate. They have to accept it for value. They have to return it to the Department of Treasury.
Right. Can I instruct or guide?
Yeah, you can guide them.
How young of an age can they do that?
I would say I would wait until they were of age till they understand it. Realistically, I don't want any of you doing any of this until you really understand it, because, and you're all over 21. So it's really, you would gauge it. Are they truly responsible? Are they truly taking a responsible position?
And then do they have the means by which to act as a creditor?
Yes.
Most children don't before the age of a minimum 16, maybe 18.
Yeah. They could go out, they could get, at 16, they can go get emancipated
What does that mean?
and
What
recognize.
you just said right there. What did you say?
The ability to act as a creditor comes from being able to generate commercial energy. And if you don't understand the nature of commercial energy, at what age do you become available?
Speak into the mic, please.
To reiterate, the ability ability to access commercial energy and to act responsibly isn't something that most children, prior to the age of 16 or 18, have access to in the world, just because they are still in the education system. They're still part of the system, not a part of a aspect of the private world. They're still in the public.
Well, it depends.
But
You can keep your kid out of the public.
They can get tickets just like we can, when they're 18 or 16 or what,
And they can use their commercial energy to set them off or discharge them.
So with kids, though, isn't there a way that you can get them bonded so that, like, for example, like in a divorce situation, the state can't then control the children? I mean, I'm not a little fuzzy.
You'd have to. Okay, let's look at all the documents of title that entail a divorce situation. Okay, first of all, where did you get married through the state?
Yes.
Okay, so who owns the property of the marriage?
State.
The state. Who controls the marriage?
Right.
The state, right? They gave you a what? Certificate? Right? Certificate. Well, first they got you the marriage license, and then you get a marriage certificate.
Right.
Yeah. Reverse the trust. Take control of that trust first.
Okay.
Now, then you've got the trust of the birth certificate. Reverse that trust. And then you've got, what other trusts do we have at play here? Let's see, we got marriage. Maybe take the marriage license as well and accept it and return
This
it.
is after two people have gotten divorced.
Oh, you've already gotten divorced? Well, then,
You're just accepting the divorce.
okay, was there a court case?
This is not me.
Right, but was there a court case involved with the divorce?
No, but there's a...
How do you get dissolution in a marriage?
Just both court.
There's a judge, right? There's a judgment. Yeah. You need to take that document and discharge that, whatever it was, judgment, however it came. And is there a conflict though between the parents?
No, it has to do with the children. That's what I'm...
Custody.
With the children.
Is there are
Yeah.
both parents on the level? Like, yeah, we agree. This is how custody is going to be.
Technically, I mean, on paper, but then there's always there's a lot of argument back and forth. So is it...
Okay. Well, if there's argument, then they're acting like debtors.
Right. Okay.
Right?
Right.
Remember King Solomon, one of the greatest judges of all time. The two mothers bring in are fighting over a child. Okay? What does King Solomon say?
Cut it in half.
Cut it in half.
Yeah.
Now, was he really going to cut it in half? No. What was he doing? Exactly. He was gauging. Who's the creditor? Who's the debtor? A creditor is willing to risk it all. And the creditor stepped forward and said, no, don't cut it in half. Fine. If you're going to give it to her, but don't cut it in half. Prove to Solomon who the creditor was.
Last question before the break.
Yeah, the problem I see with the registration of your child on the birth certificate and leaving that way until they're, say, 18, is that they're a ward of the state.
Yes.
That's what I'm asking.
This way, the state can come in through social workers or whatever and take your children out of your home if they perceive a reason for that.
Yeah, unless you have a claim.
Yeah, if you file your UCC1 and name your children
That's
on
right.
there, then I think...
But it's not the UCC1 that does the work.
Security.
That's just a notice.
Security agreement.
You need a security, a claim. If you've got a claim, nobody can touch those kids. Yeah, you get a claim, reverse the trust, take control of their trust. See, remember, you can't do it for them, but you can take control of their trust as their parent. You can say, I'm going to take their birth certificate, I'm accepting it for value and returning it. I now am the trustee. Not the kid, I am. Not the state, I am.
Yeah.
Okay?
And if you have the highest claim, then you
Right. It's the highest.
Superior claim.
if your dog gets out, that's my dog.
Right.
If your dog gets out in the street, what's the first thing you do when you go get your dog? They say, well, you have to have a license, you have to have this, you have to have that, you have to pay pound fees, blah, 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 blah. Are they, and they have every right to do it because the dog's been, what, abandoned? Right, Brandon?
Mm-hmm.
Right, Brandon? But if I walk in there with
Well, no, not if you did license it or you haven't
the
licensed
dog
it.
doesn't have a license at all, it gets out.
Yeah, it's abandoned
I
property.
walk in with a UCC1, says that's my property, you
Yep.
can't relieve me on my property without due process of law,
Yeah.
and you can't charge me all this stuff, that's my dog, you get your dog back.
Yeah.
Same thing with your kids.
Right.
Same thing, you can't poke my kid with that and put a bunch of poison in his body, it's my kid.
Right.
See, marriage license, all this stuff. Once again, congressional law supersedes
Okay.
constitutional law.
Yep, we got to switch the tapes.
So just before we start back up again, if anyone hasn't left their email with us already, we're going to let people know about the classes starting up, and the DVDs available for tonight and things by email. So please make sure that we have your email before you leave tonight if you want to get more information.
Is there a fee for tonight?
For you, it's $100.
Can I discharge that?
Mr. Barker had a gift for us, Jason. Then come back and talk.
Yeah.
Corner wine over there.
Robin knows better than to take credit instruments from debtors.
Unless it's an approved upon note.
Oh, I lost Kevin.
We'll get into that later.
If you can hear me, Kevin is gone for the night.
Oh, shoot. Probably shouldn't be calling him then. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, no problem.
Alrighty. Is there anything that you guys feel I should cover, or do we want to just do questions? I feel like I've probably given enough of a foundation that we can move forward from this point and actually go into details on how to create claims, perfecting security interests, and things like that.
Now, when you said you were going to cover claims, you said there were 3 types of claims, and I wasn't quite
Well, I actually wasn't talking about 3 types of claims. I was going to go into what I call the elements of commerce, and realistically, it's now I've forgotten what my list of 3 was going to be, but I'll give you a brief synopsis of what may cover that. Since there is no money and legal title being exchanged, there is no, all we have is security interest, okay? You don't have title, you have interest, okay? Because no money is exchanging hands, it's all discharge and set off, it's putting off into the future. And because of that, we really, all we can do is perfect our claims, which give us a security interest. I think is probably the best way to put it.
Okay, so real world question.
Okay.
Right? Because this is going to come up for a lot of people here. American Express. We've been customers of American Express for 15 plus years.
Okay.
American Express now decides they're going to become a bank. They're being bought by HSBC and Centurion. American Express, even though we had not entered into this agreement with them whatsoever, American Express writes us a letter, actually makes a series of funny phone calls first, not letters, now says, in order for us to continue to extend your credit, you have to now provide us with 3 years worth of income tax returns, or we will cancel your credit cards and ding your credit, basically, for not responding. So I wrote them back and said, thank you very much. I accept what it is you're saying, and we'll do whatever it is you ask based upon proof of claim. Now, of course, I'm arguing, but based upon proof of claim that you're not violating my Fourth Amendment rights, Fifth Amendment rights, that you're not breaching the contract, and that I had any agreement with you whatsoever to provide you with 3 years' worth of income tax statements. They wrote us back saying, well, now you have an amount in dispute. I wrote them back saying, no, we don't have an amount in dispute. You breached your contract. You breached your contract with us. Therefore, and now why should we pay if you breach the contract? Now, I suppose the next thing I should do is simply accept it for value, certify it, accept it for value, return it for value, which of course they're going to ignore because they're just going to go, well, this is a bunch of crap, and continue to bill us.
Yeah, because
even though they've breached the contract, they will continue to bill us, continue to destroy our credit, et cetera, even though we can continue to send it back to them certified, accepted for value. Now, the logical conclusion is you're going to wind up in court with American Express. Okay?
Okay.
So, real world example
Are
here.
you taking them to court, or are they
No,
taking
they would probably take us to court.
Okay.
I would stand up in court and said, Your Honor, they breached the contract. Okay, so help me out here. It's a real world situation that a lot of people are facing right now with credit cards and whatever else. I've had a credit card company that I've been a good customer with cancel my credit cards based on my not being willing to provide them. Them coming up with a whole new series of terms, by the way. And we want to be a bank now. Therefore, we want you to provide us with income tax form. I said, show me how this was part of my agreement when I entered into this with you, and eventually this is going to wind up in court, and I'm getting my ass kicked.
The fact that they sent you the notice is a new agreement. It's a new offer.
Okay.
Okay.
I said I accept it. Please,
You accept it.
Based upon proof of claim, I'd be happy to do whatever.
Then you're not accepting it, are
Based upon
you?
proof of claim.
Based upon proof of claim is conditional. You're not really accepting it.
Brandon having a real hard time hearing the questions and now your answers.
Okay. Are you hearing the static? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
A little bit of static, but mostly it's just the volume is very low.
Okay. We'll hold the mics closer to the people asking the questions and see if that helps. Can you hear me okay?
You're still pretty low.
Really? Hello. Okay. Let me see. That is, no, not that, not that. I hate to push this any higher.
Too concerned about people on the internet.
How about now?
That's better.
Okay.
I wanted to ask about what would be an appropriate response in a situation like that. Should you be the first one to put out a new agreement with them? Would it be the first guy in that makes it, or what?
Last in,
because
first out.
It's change in agreement. You weren't expecting it, and what's the best defense?
The best defense is not to defend. Defense is argument.
Right.
You agree. You accept. Now, in the case, was there an amount in dispute or anything like that?
No, they just called and said, you don't provide us with your tax records for the next 3 years, we're going to cancel your cards, and you're going to have to pay us anyway.
Okay, so if you don't provide...
They've done it to, I'm sorry, to repeat, they sent us a notice that said, you supply us with 3 years of income tax records, or we will cancel your credit cards, and within 5 days, they said do it within 5 days, we'll cancel your credit cards, we will ding your credit if you don't respond to us right away, and you still owe us the money that you owe us, even though you've been a sterling customer, never had a late payment ever in 15 years. They've now done this to millions of people because they want to now be part of HSBC and Centurion Bank. So they canceled 2 credit cards, mine and my wife's, canceled the cards because I wrote them back and said, show me how I entered into this agreement with you. Show me where it says I'm supposed to.
That was the new agreement came from. That was the new agreement. The fact that they sent you a document saying here's the terms we're now operating under. Yeah, they gave you a rebuttal time, the 5 days. Now, if you didn't make it in the 5 days, you would put something in your response to the effect of this is my timely response, and then state why you didn't get it in within the 5 days. Typically,
actually, I'm sorry, I responded within 5 days. I didn't provide them with income tax records.
Exactly. So you dishonored their offer by not going by the terms, which is fine. And if it does go to court, well, then you just pay off the court case. It's a new offer. It's a totally different offer than what offer they have on the table currently. What I would have done is say, if I didn't have the tax record, say, well, I need to file my taxes for those years. Once I have filed those taxes, I can provide you with records. Is that acceptable for you?
Okay, and my response to that one, I don't care about people on the internet, but I can say this in the microphone if you want. My response to them was, and I wrote the back of my letterhead and the whole thing, I'm an ambassador for a foreign nation state. As an ambassador at large, I'm not required to file these with the federal government. Therefore, please reinstate my card.
The fact
said no. We're not going to reinstate your card.
Was the card issued to an ambassador of a foreign nation state or a U.S. citizen? A U.S. citizen with a Social Security number, right? Yeah. So realistically, even if you're an ambassador of a foreign nation state, the fact is that in jurisdiction B, as a U.S. citizen, is who they issued the card to. They wouldn't issue a card to someone that they couldn't extend. Because realistically, when you signed the initial agreement, You gave them permission to get those funds from Treasury in your name. You generated the funds on the card. They're not, just like the bank when you buy a house, they're not giving you any money. You're generating all the money. Okay?
So what's the response? What do you do?
Didn't I just give it? I would have given them the tax records if I had them. If I didn't have them, I'd say give me time to prepare them. Or let's terminate this agreement. You could terminate agreement. To terminate means that both parties mutually agree to end the contract. Okay, so we can terminate the agreement, and then there's nothing to worry about. I know that's not the answer you want to hear.
Because they're still going to sue me for the money that I owe them.
No. You pay the money too. Pay whatever's owed. Yeah. If there's money owed, I would pay that as well.
I just had a credit card company send me a letter in the mail saying because you haven't used the credit card in a while, we're just canceling the credit card.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, well, what can I do? Not, argue about it.
Send them a letter within 10 days saying I will use it, or if I use it, can it stay enacted or whatever valid.
Well, there's a tax remedy available for this guy that's at the American Express problem.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the thing to go into in this.
No, there is, and we will be discussing that in procedures when we go into the next class. Basically, the IRS has several forms out there that have been devised for you to be a creditor and acquire those funds that are in escrow. So, for instance, the fact that there's an outstanding amount on that American Express card, that amount is in escrow. The funds are there. You just have to tell the IRS with the proper tax filings, hey, go get those funds and pay this guy off with it, or return those funds to me. And
What's the OID?
OID in the A, 1099A.
What's OID stand for?
Original issue discount.
So what if he had already paid them out of his own personal bank account funds? How would he get those funds back?
If you meaning he paid it with a check or, yes. Okay, then in that situation, you basically OID that. Any funds that go out of your banking account, you can OID and get back. Okay? Anything that's in escrow, like when you sign the promissory note on your house or a student loan or anything like that, those funds are sitting in an escrow account. And you would use a 1099A to acquire, to do an acquisition of those funds.
These are tied into our 1040 forms that we would file.
The 1099 OID, as if you file as recipient, those get reported on a 1040 if you want the funds returned. 1099As don't get reported on a 1040. Neither do OIDs when you're the payer.
Can you use the OIDA for paying off estate taxes too?
OID is separate than A. They're two different. 1099 OID and a 1099A.
Oh, which one could you use either that to pay off the state taxes?
State tax is in an escrow account. So yes, you can use a 1099A to say, hey, use those funds in the escrow and pay this debt. Or you could send the obligation to the Treasury with a money order and say, hey, Mr. Secretary of Treasury, pay that debt. Or you can go to the bank, get a pre-approved transaction through Treasury, go to the bank, start a TT&L transaction, bond the account, and tell the bank to hold the funds in escrow, send a notice to the state taxing agency that they're holding the funds in escrow, and as soon as they get a zero balance, a statement of account showing a zero balance, that they'll release the funds to the state taxing agency. There's literally 100 different ways to skin a cat in commerce, so we will discuss them all because there's some that'll be preferred. You could use negotiable instruments. We'll even discuss how to create negotiable instruments, how to create money orders, how to create bonds and things like that, and also how to use the IRS and their forms to handle this situation too. Remember, when they took away your right to property and your ability to have legal title, they gave you something in return, and the IRS is your the IRS is there for the creditors, right?
Yep.
If you're a creditor, who's the IRS working for?
You.
Exactly. IRS is working for you when you're the creditor.
And the Treasury.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit of your background and then also maybe
Like on what I've done as far as processes, or where did I learn all this stuff?
and also what we might be learning and how it might affect it, like an overview of what someone out of the class would be learning and doing, how it might affect their life, just an example, an overview, just kind of an appetizer list
Of what we're going to be doing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, basically what we'll be doing is taking any and all obligations and situations and showing how, as a creditor, we would handle it. And that involves perfecting claims using negotiable instruments, proper tax filings, how to file as a creditor, how to get return of your funds, things like that, so that you can go into your community and benefit your community as a creditor. And when we say acting as a creditor, I mean it in all aspects of life, not just in your financial aspects. Really, being a creditor means being spiritually a creditor as well. I tried for a long time to keep the spiritual world separate from the commercial world, and you can't. Not if you really want to be a creditor. If you're a debtor, no problem. Keep the two worlds separate. But chances are, if you're a debtor in the spiritual world, you're a debtor in the commercial world. Or if you're a debtor in the commercial world, you're probably a debtor in the spiritual world. So we'll be going over mostly the concepts that are involved in the state of mind of being a creditor. And from that point, we have infinite potential of creating our own solutions. So I'm not going to tell you, yeah, here's the guidebook of where to go, because that wouldn't be the place to go. Because realistically, when you understand being a creditor, you'll understand that there is no resource out there for you to give this to you. I can give you documents. I can give you bonds. I can give you negotiable instruments. I can give you all these things. But if you're not coming from being a creditor, it's just going to get you into trouble. And I can give you plenty of examples of that, of people who get themselves into trouble because they don't understand what they're doing, or they're not taking responsibility.
So I want to give you one more example. In taking a buyout, you get taxed like 40% of your money, when I took a buyout from my company.
Okay.
Is this where the OID 1099 is that where you would file? In that case, is that? I'm just trying to get an example.
Okay, so the 40% was taken by the IRS.
Correct.
Okay. Well, as a debtor, you pay taxes on your income, right? Now, the tax filings that went in on that transaction, you didn't bother to correct. So they're going off of what's been reported to them. And what's been reported to them is that you're a tax collector. You collected so many hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax. They're taking their 40%. That's what's been reported. Now, when you learn to be a creditor, you'll learn how to correct those filings. You'll learn how to properly report it to the IRS. A creditor does not get taxed. Like all the funds that the IRS takes in and sends to the creditors, they don't tax the creditors on it, because they're creditors. Just like if you buy a treasury bond, a 30-year bond, and you get the dividends from that, you don't get taxed on that because you're a creditor. It's a return of interest to the creditor. So if you're properly reporting the funds that are coming into you as a return of interest to the creditor, there's no tax due on. But as soon as you take a benefit and a privilege or an exemption or a deduction.
When you say exemption, you mean like?
I mean on your tax form. I have one exemption, I have this many deductions. Those are benefits. Those are for debtors. Creditors do not take deductions. Creditors do not take exemptions. Creditors just get a return of their interest.
All of it.
All of it.
So then you would not put zero exemptions?
Zero exemptions and no filing status.
Take benefits or privileges.
Filing status automatically entitles you to an exemption. So even if you write zero exemptions, if you write single or married filing joint or whatever, if you mark any of the filing statuses, you're taking a benefit and a privilege.
So in this course, we would be able to go back and we change those things?
Up to 3 years.
Yeah, you can get your funds back up to 3 years.
Or tax credits beyond that. That's happened within the last
tax
3 years.
credits beyond that.
It's happened within the last 3 years.
You could get your money back. Thank you.
Good.
Does this whole interest thing tie in with the biblical stuff?
Yes.
And how?
Which interest are we talking about? Usury interest?
Yeah, I guess usury or whatever in the Bible.
In the Bible, usury, who can you charge usury to?
Strangers, Azures, racial aliens.
Foreigners. Okay? Who's the creditor?
The Hebrew.
Or the foreigners. The foreigners can charge usury on you because you're foreign. So they are doing it by biblical law as well. They can only charge usury to foreigners. Now, if you loan your brother $1,000 and charge him usury, that's against the biblical law and against the spiritual laws. But it's your obligation. Is there anyone in this room who has not transgressed the laws of God?
No.
Nope. I'll venture out and say there's never been a human being on this planet who hasn't.
You might want to briefly explain the Jubilees, Brandon.
Jubilee? Well, Jubilee ties right in with bankruptcy. Jubilee is 7 times 7. God's law, every 7 years you're to let the land go, to rest. Yes. So, but God doesn't punish you right away if in the 7 years you don't do it. What he does is he waits 7 cycles of 7 years, which are actually 70 cycles of 7 years, which brings you to 490 years. Okay, so that's how long you have, or how long you will serve in servitude, how long you will be a slave to pay your debt. Okay, remember, in the Old Testament, God had nothing against slavery. He put his own people into slavery because they weren't following his law, and the law, and basically by the Jubilee, if they haven't redeemed themselves, well then they're going to go into slavery.
Explain the rest of it. You have to explain. You can't just do the 7.
What do you want me to explain?
Just a brief. Here, hold on. So every 7 years, you repudiated all debt.
Right.
Freed petty criminals, which means there was no jail time. You can do more than 7 years. That's where we get bankruptcy every 7 years. That's where we get if you escaped a crime, for example, statute of limitations, 7 years. So you freed the slaves, broke all contracts, freed all petty criminals. Everybody could come back into the country, repudiated all debts, and then let the land lie fallow for 1 year. 7 times 7 is 49. The Grand Jubilee, you return the land to the people that originally owned it.
Right.
Which means that if you went bankrupt on your farm, and I came along, I could use your ancestral property for a period of 49 years or less,
right,
until I had to return it to you,
right,
after the 50 years. This all plays into everything that has to do with the OID and everything else. If you don't do that for 4 cycles of 50, you go into the 5th cycle of discipline, which is what the United States is in now, basically, of another 50 years where your country is raped, enslaved, taken over by foreigners, and eventually your people are all carted off, your businesses are foreclosed on.
Iron yoke
and that's
slavery.
Where we're at now.
We've been under wooden yoke. You guys in the Bible, they talk about under the wooden yoke and under the iron yoke.
Yes.
Wooden yoke is you're a slave in your own land. Iron yoke is you're a slave in a foreign land. So when the Hebrews were taken into Babylon, that's the equivalent of being under the iron yoke. Or taking your debtors to Guantanamo Bay is being under iron yoke. Okay?
Does this also have to do with that every foreign or every agent and corporation is actually foreign status, so they're actually operating on? I have a document about it, but do you know what I'm talking about? Where all of the judges, attorneys, policemen, they're actually all foreign agents.
They're working for a foreign... All judges and attorneys are members of the bar. The bar is centered out of the Temple Bar in London, so they're working for the crown. That's why they have a title of nobility, esquire. They're assistant to a squire.
It's the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act, is what I'm referring to.
Well, we're talking about jurisdiction B, and in jurisdiction B, there is no sovereignty. Okay, so realistically, yeah, they're working for a foreign power, and so is the IRS, but they're not really, unless they acknowledge jurisdiction A, they're not doing anything wrong. Because what happened was out of the republic came the democracy. And now everyone's functioning in the democracy. And it's their job to return the property to the creditors. That's why the word attorney comes from atourne, the old French term atourne, which is to turn over property to the new ruler. And when the states lost their sovereignty in 1859, that's why it was okay to have attorneys, because now the states can't have legal title. So it's up to the attorneys, the judges, and the IRS to make sure that the creditors get their stuff. Yeah.
More on the ironwood yoke.
The ironwood yoke. Well, all the iron yoke, wood yoke is iron yoke is when you're in slavery. Being under the iron yoke means you're in slavery in a foreign land. Okay, so my example was when the Hebrews were taken out of the land of milk and honey and brought into Babylon, they were under the iron yoke. Whereas when they were conquered by the Romans, they were under the wooden yoke. Because the Romans said, yeah, you can stay here and work the land.
Is there a remedy for
Is
us
there?
to get out from this situation?
Yeah, be a creditor. Then you're not under any yoke. If you're a creditor, you're not in B. B is where all the slaves are. A is all sovereigns. Because in A, you control your property. If you control your property, you're not a slave. Okay?
If you buy a house and the bank gets their money, refunds, whatever it is, how long do you have in order to get your money back?
3 years. After 3 years, they'll declare it abandoned. And it'll be abandoned property, and they'll take possession of those funds out of escrow.
Now, what if would that also constitute like if you refinance your house? Is that start the cycle all over?
Yes. A refinance is a new, if you notice, there's a new instrument, and typically even a new deed of trust. So it's a new obligation.
Can you tell us about your experience, particularly like on what you really experienced when we're coming down to getting payments back, or what you've done in real estate transactions, things like that, please?
Yeah, we can talk briefly about that. I can't go into too many details, but as far as getting funds back from the IRS, there's literally probably tens of thousands of people now doing that, and and there's been people who have actually been doing it for years. I know one gentleman's been doing it for at least 5 years, and he's one of the ones who pioneered this technology of the 1099 OID. And as far as property is concerned, I've had the experience of dealing with banks on property. Currently, I'm assisting, more people than I probably at least 6, 7 people with properties, and I actually took the liability as a creditor on all those properties, and as of yet, not one of those people has lost their house. One of them is no longer in possession, but I got a call from the title company on that particular piece of property a couple weeks ago, and because I have a lien on the property, I have a UCC1 financing statement filed on that property, and they really can't sell it until they've satisfied my lien. And they call me up and they're like, hey, Mr. Adams, we were wondering if we could send you a quick claim deed. Why would they send me a quick claim deed? I'm not even the guy on the deed. Why would they have to send me one? Because I'm the one who's actually got title to the property. I've got a security interest. I said, sure. Are you going to pay the obligation? She says, well, how much is it? I said, $800,000. She said, oh, no. I am not authorized to pay that. I said, well, then you probably aren't going to be sending that quick claim deed, because I'm only going to sign it if you're going to pay the debt. And she said, yeah, I see your position. Yeah. She's all, okay, thank you for your time. That's all she got. But I wasn't going to sign a quick claim deed unless they're going to meet the obligation. The obligation is $800,000. I have an $800,000 claim on a $400,000 piece of property. So the bank would have to be retarded to pay $800,000 so that they could turn around and sell it for $400,000. In this market especially. They're not even going to sell it.
So you've taken the debt, because I have a neighbor that's, looks like he might lose his place.
I wouldn't recommend to anyone in here doing what I do, because I'm putting myself on the chopping block for other people. I say you want to teach this.
Teach them how.
Teach them how to do this. Teach them the tax remedies. Teach them how to be a creditor, because realistically, I don't know what I've gotten myself into by putting myself liable for all these other people's debts. I might be doing something that's outside of the realm of their fictional world. Okay? So I'm not going to educate anyone on how to do what I do, but I will educate you on how to be a creditor and how to make creditors.
Couldn't you discharge their debt for them?
I've done it. I've been in the process of doing it. We'll see when it comes down to doing the transactions through the banks, because I can get the transactions pre-approved to Treasury and then bring them into the bank. If I have success with that, then yeah, I can. If I can't, then all I can do is sit on my security interest, and then me and the bank are at a stalemate. So, actually, realistically, in California, this is what we call a trust deed state. Okay? So when you get a house or buy a house, you fill out a deed of trust, and then there's the grant deed. And deed of trust is separate from the grant deed. Grant deed is the title, and it has your name on it and your name on it only. Okay? The deed of trust is a contract. It's a lien. And the deed of trust is a trust that you are what they call the trustor. A trustor is the same as a grantor. You're the one who created the trust. Okay? You made the title company the trustee, and you made the bank the beneficiary. Okay? That's what's been created. You created it. No, the only kind of trust that a grantor does not have control over ultimately is an irrevocable trust. Okay? You read your deed of trust and tell me if you can find the word irrevocable anywhere in there. And you won't find it in there. So the fact is, you could file a document with the county recorder saying, yeah, I'm getting rid of the trust. I'm reshaping this trust. You're no longer the trustee. You're no longer the beneficiary. I'm the beneficiary. I'm the trustee. Or I'm the beneficiary. This guy over here is the trustee. This is the new trust. They no longer have a security interest in your property. And I've done that on 7 or 8 pieces of property. So now the title company can't even sell it. They're like, we've got no more authority. I got rid of their interest in the property, so they can't touch it. So again, I'm still at a standstill because I haven't got my zero balance of account from them, and that's really ultimately in commerce. You want accounts closed as a creditor. If my only goal was to keep these people in their houses, I've done that, except for the one. But the one that I didn't, there was no one in possession of the property. There was no one actually living in the property. So they just sent a locksmith over, changed the locks, took possession. But all the houses where people are living, none of them have been touched. And supposedly, at least 3 or 4 of them have been sold in a trustee sale. But what do they sell at a trustee sale? Anyone know? This is my best student over here. He's heard this all before. All they sell is the bank's interest. They don't sell your property. The bank has beneficial interest according to the deed of trust, right? But you have the grant deed in your name. Did you know even after the deed of trust, or even after the bank's interest has been sold, what document do you have to sign before they can actually sell the property? Quitclaim deed. If you don't sign a quitclaim deed, they can't touch the property because you're the one on the grant deed.
So why do they sell houses
They sell the bank's interest. They don't sell the house, they sell the bank's interest in the house.
But you can still live in it.
Until somebody comes to kick you out. But again, it depends who's got the superior security interest. Because if I've got the superior security interest, I can bond the sheriff to kick them out. I've got the security interest. I can go to the sheriff's department and say, hey, how much for a bond to go get my property? $500. Okay, here you go. I bonded you. Go get my property. And that's all it would take.
So they say possession is 9/10 of the law, the other 10% is what?
Possession is 9/10. The other 1%. What is it?
10%.
The other 10%.
What's the other 10% if 9/10 or
90%?
Yeah, the other 1/10 of the law, I guess, yeah.
9/10 of the law is
You know what
possession.
that's saying, 9/10 of the law is possession?
Yeah. What's the rest of the saying?
The other 10th is the law.
I would say it's legal title. Yeah.
Isn't it who has the bigger lien?
Yep. Who's got that? But that's the security interest. That's what we're talking about. Title is, see, the fact that why did that title company call me and ask me to sign a quitclaim deed? I've got the title. I don't actually. The grant deed's not in my name. I don't have the title, but I have the superior security interest, which means I hold legal title.
You're like the insurance company. Legal.
No, I'm the title holder. Because I've got the superior security interest. Nobody else has a right to that property before me. They have to go through me to do anything with that property, because I've filed the highest form of lien, a commercial lien. Okay, liens break down: commercial lien, tax lien, mechanics lien, then a mortgage lien. So the mortgage lien, which in this state is a deed of trust, is the lowest form of lien on the ladder of liens.
Did you do that again?
Yeah. I'll write it down instead of just pretending it's up there.
Getting lazy.
Yeah, I'm getting lazy. I'm just pretending. Here, visualize. Okay. Highest form of lien is a commercial lien.
Can you lien your own house, your own property?
People have.
Yeah. Who's got interest in it?
I mean, if you're going into foreclosure or something like that, can you put a lien against your own property?
Yes, you can. Now, defending that claim. Now, remember, the lien isn't the UCC filing. It's whatever claim you've got backing up that UCC filing. So don't think that you could just go file a UCC1 and everything's done and good.
Worthless unless you have a security.
Exactly. So first, the top level, highest form of lien, commercial lien. Remember in our law forms, what was the highest form of law besides natural law? Commercial law. So this is your highest form of lien. Then,
What's an example of that?
of a commercial lien,
Yeah.
How about postcard?
a UCC1 financing statement.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, a commercial lien is I'm a foreigner and I am a creditor and I have an interest in your property and I file a UCC1 financing statement because that represents a commercial lien on your property. And now even the IRS can't say anything because the IRS is working for the creditors in general. Okay, so that's why a tax lien comes below that. Remember, IRS is working for the creditors. Okay? So if the IRS is working for the creditors, their liens come secondary to my lien. Because my lien is in the highest form of law, commercial law.
Is that like doing the roof or something like that?
No, it's mechanics lien. That's the next on the list.
But I'm trying to think what an example of a commercial lien would be. It would be,
They can't. Nobody in jurisdiction B can file a commercial lien on you. You see the power of the commercial lien? Okay. Then you have mechanics lien. And then you have mortgage lien. Or what really contract lien is a mortgage lien. Okay. So those are your liens and how they break down. Commercial is because I'm coming from jurisdiction A, foreign to B, and I'm a creditor, I hold the highest lien. So even though the deed of trust is dated before my commercial lien, they can't touch it. If you owed the IRS $100,000 and they had a lien on your house, who's going to get paid first, the mortgage company or the IRS? Oh yeah, because they represent the creditors. Remember, the bank is just another debtor. The bank's part of jurisdiction B. They're just another debtor. So their lien is equivalent to me just saying, yeah, that's my place. Microphone.
So if the IRS goes after your property, puts a lien on it, can you then subvert it with a commercial lien? Like after they've already put a lien on it tax-wise?
Subvert it? I don't know if subvert's the right word. Supersede it?
Supersede it, yes. With a commercial lien?
Yes.
Okay. Even after they've already placed
Yes,
a lien on the property?
because you're up here. They're down here. If you were the franchise tax board, you'd be right here. Franchise tax board would be subservient. The IRS would supersede the franchise tax board because really, even though the franchise tax board puts a tax lien, franchise tax board is a corporation. They're out of jurisdiction B. They don't represent the creditors. They represent debtors. They represent the debtor known as the state of California. The state of California is a corporation. It's a debtor, and the franchise tax board is just. Actually, the franchise tax board has the same tax ID as the state of California. Did you know the state of California had a tax ID?
Of course they do. So does every judge and every police officer.
Well, they have Social Security numbers.
Well, they've got, well, no, but just as an official, they've got a TIN number, EIN number.
They may. They don't have to, but they may. Like my dad is a private accountant. He doesn't have a corporation, but he has an EIN or a TIN that's separate from his Social Security number.
But aren't all organizations under? Aren't all the organizations traded on Dun & Bradstreet also?
Yes.
Yeah. So then they would have that. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, they all. Everything that's doing business in the public has a tax ID. The bank or the court has a tax ID.
Right.
I've gotten court's tax IDs. I've gotten everything you could think of. I got in the state of California's tax ID. Okay, so they all have tax IDs, and they're all doing business. It's all commercial.
There's talk that Arnold Schwarzenegger may declare California bankrupt in February. What's the answer to that? I mean, what's after that?
What do you mean?
He's going to declare it bankrupt.
I'd say there's no new news in that statement. It's been bankrupt since 1859.
California.
Yeah.
All of them.
They're all bankrupt.
So they're looking for a bailout then.
Yeah, they're looking for liquidity.
Okay.
That's what they're looking for. Yeah, they're looking for some funds from Treasury. Basically, remember, everyone's asking for change. Everyone wants the government to fix the problem. Well, they're going to do it, but it's going to cost you. It's going to be at a price. And the price is these new debts that are being incurred by the states, all the municipalities, whether it's your county, city, state, they're all going to be going bankrupt.
Well, the interesting thing
Or they're
is,
already bankrupt.
I don't know how much. I just been learning a new thing about the composite annual financial reports.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many people know about that, but where like every city
CAFR funds.
annual financial reports.
Yeah.
No, where every city, every municipality, and then the state actually they are basing their budgets off of, the financial reports are basing off of their budgets, but the actual amounts that every organization has is like trillions in the black. Like the country actually is $110 trillion in the black.
Did you know that the government, through all those municipalities and CAFR funds, owns a majority of all the corporations in this country?
Yep, exactly, and all the land is communism.
It is. Well, it's been communism since the communism started in 1865. It really went into full force in 1933, and now moving into this new cycle, it's got to be even more. But we got to make it look like a capitalist.
Right.
We have to, because if we don't, it would totally break down. Because outright communism leads to the destruction of society because everyone wants something for nothing. Well, if you're just going to give it to us and we don't have to work for it, well, then we're not going to work. That's a debtor. Exactly, that's a debtor. A creditor will work no matter what. A creditor is going to work because work is what you're here for. Whether you choose to be a garbage man or whatever is up to you, but you're here to serve mankind. And that's the stand of a creditor, the position of a creditor. If you're not coming from that, which, sad to say, 99.9% of the population isn't, so that's why we have to treat you all like debtors. And that's why we don't educate you on this, and that's why we don't tell you the secrets. We tell you you're bound by the laws, and this is how it works, and you're subservient, you're a subject, you're a resident, you're a citizen. And if you believe it, then you're a debtor. Because they know that anyone who knows who they are and knows that they're not fiction, then they will operate over there in jurisdiction A.
Are you familiar with the block grants then?
Block grants?
Yeah, the block grants. Access our credit, keep it from us, and actually use it for public utility.
Oh yeah. That's why when you live in a city, the city has access to your exemption, and that, like I said, who's the source of all the money? You are. And when you in that municipality, whether it's a state, the county, the United States, the city of Huntington Beach, the county of Orange, they all use your exemption. Okay? Like when you get a property tax statement showing that you owe a property tax, it's because they've already generated the funds in your name. Your exemption was used to create that amount of money. It's sitting in an escrow account. You decided to take Federal Reserve notes and pay it, but that's not what they were asking you to do. They were asking you, please get those funds out of escrow for us.
Roller skates, you know. Do you recommend people copyright their name? Can you use that at all, or?
No. Let's go over the whys. What would you get from that?
Well, people that are coming after you, you could say, hey, don't use my name.
Who are you going to copyright it with?
Yeah.
Jurisdiction B? Well, if you copyright it in Jurisdiction A, who's the only one who can enforce it?
Me.
You. Realistically, those types of tactics are controversies. You're arguing, you're going into controversy, you're not just paying the debt. If you're looking for some kind of an out, like I want to get rid of my driver's license, and I want to expatriate my citizenship, and there are people out there who do that, and you know what? They live, and you could actually survive in this world, and probably not in this world, but if you live out in the middle of the desert, you can get along fine without being a U.S. citizen, without having a Social Security number, and without having a birth certificate. You could survive, no problem. But if you want to be a creditor and you want to help your community, those are powerful documents for you to be in control of. See, being in control of the trust and not being a subject is a powerful position. But if you're just looking to, I don't want to be subject, that's really the standpoint of a debtor, because a creditor knows I'm not subject. There's no one who can enforce anything on me, especially if I control my property.
I may have missed this part. If you become a creditor, you're on side A, but you're still working for somebody, you're an employee. What are the complications that happen as well?
Who's actually working for that company?
Well, you as an employee.
The straw man is. Okay? Your trust. You see, remember, they took away your ability to hold title, and they gave you something very valuable in return. And it was that straw man. That name in all capital letters that everyone is afraid of and hates, it's like the best thing they could have ever gave you. Because that thing is what you get to use in the public to interact with the companies. If you're an employee, you're not an employee because, you know what, a public entity can't even see you because you have no title. Okay? We get confused that the name that I write down is me. No, that's a name. That's a title. Whether it's in uppercase, lowercase, Egyptian hieroglyphics, it doesn't matter. It's just a title. It's not you. In fact, because that's not you, the public entities cannot make a distinction that you are separate from the whole. They look at you as debtor. And your pass-through is that entity. That straw man is your public entity. It's your public pass-through. It's your conduit through which you interact commercially.
Yeah, people are curious about corporations when accessing our credit. There's a specific IRS form that's available you can send in, and they'll supply you with the information. They'll just give you your social. And I don't remember correctly, but it might be like a 4106 form.
4506T?
Something like that.
Yeah. It's to get your transcripts. Yeah. You get, I actually filled it out for the last 12 years. And found out that there's nothing on it. But about 10 years ago, I figured that because I didn't understand it, but I understood the tax code. That was what first sent me in the direction of understanding what I understand now. Somebody had approached me and said, hey, did you know you don't have to pay taxes? I said, really? Well, I'm not going to take your word for it. I'm going to go figure that out for myself. So I went to Title 26, which is the tax code, and I read it thoroughly, and I said, damn, he's right. You don't have to pay taxes, but it's very unclear because corporations, which operate under benefits and privileges, are taxed. And I knew in the back of my mind, well, Brandon A. Adams, all capital, is a corporation. So how do I not get benefits and privileges? So, no more being an employee. That means no more receiving 1099s and W-2s. No more bank accounts. And I did that for 10 years. And I dropped off the radar. And they've never sent me even one letter saying that there was anything wrong with what I was doing because I wasn't incurring any liabilities. They were like, hey, this guy just disappeared. And that's because, and I knew enough to know how to get out. But I didn't want to get rid of my citizenship and all that. That to me seemed extreme, and I wasn't sure I'd be able to get it back if I wanted it. So I'm like, okay, I'll keep the citizenship, that's fine, but I know that if I'm not taking a benefit and privilege, I'm not liable for anything.
Does that include driver's license?
Yeah, I don't have a driver's license either.
ID, anything. So somebody says, give me some ID, not true.
Not sure what. Oh, I do. I do have a driver's license, but it's an international driving permit. I'm actually the Postmaster General for the Dominion of Melchizedek. So I'm actually immune. I'm actually immune. I actually have diplomatic immunity, but I don't need it. I don't need it. Yeah, I don't need it as a creditor, but I have it. So I have a California state ID, but that's not a benefit and privilege.
Actually, you have a driver's license for the island of Melchizedek,
right.
The island of Tiongi, or the Melchizedek Island, and an international driving permit that connects to that,
right.
Along with diplomatic ID,
yep.
As the Postmaster General for the DOM.
Yep.
Okay, so how is that having international driver's license different than copyrighting your name? How is that different? I mean, like as far as like that same tactic working with the citizen.
You won't be able to copyright your name.
We can trademark it.
No, not really. Yeah, you could get it trademarked, but unless what's the trade? What's your business?
But I'm just saying, is the idea the same as getting an international driver's license?
No. Trademarking and copyrighting your name doesn't do anything. Has anyone who's heard of that heard about people trying to enforce that? They'll laugh at you. They'll say you're insane, and they'll put you in an insane asylum. Actually, no. What was it? The alternative reality.
Alternative reality disorder.
Alternative reality disorder. Okay. So.
The guy in Texas. The guy in Texas said, the United States, domiciled out of Puerto Rico, blah, 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 and they said you suffer from ARD. Alternative reality.
Because we're over here in B.
All this patriot mythology and all this junk.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question about the driver's license? Because the difference difference between having an international driving permit, okay, which is under the United Nations and whatever else, and the difference between having a California driver's license is a driver is paid by the state of California to transport goods, services, and passengers on the public easements in commerce and traffic.
Right.
And then as you sign the driver's license, you agree to a series of cascade agreements. Are you with me on this, Brandon?
Yeah, no,
There's a series of cascade
totally
agreements
right.
that say, okay, you're transporting goods, services, passengers in the employ of the state of California, et cetera, et cetera. Now, cop pulls you over, says driver's license registration, you say, I'm sorry, I wasn't driving, I was exercising my constitutional right to travel the public easements.
I would stay away from the, I would also stay away from.
What about vehicle registration? You could say, well, it's not my vehicle, this is my engine-driven piece of private property, and it's a privately owned conveyance. What about your passengers? These are not my passengers, these are my friends and family who are on the way to church or market. Most of the time these conversations end with, officer, the cuffs are hurting me.
Ooh, yeah, and the fact that you just said I'm on my way to church or market.
You're on your way.
Aren't those commercial destinations?
No.
Church?
They're commercial destinations, but on your way to church or market with friends and family, because you're not transporting passengers point A and point B, therefore you're not engaging in traffic.
Were you driving on a public road?
The motor vehicle code says the only people that have to have driver's licenses are bus drivers, taxi cab drivers, and driving commercially.
Professional
What they do
drivers.
by taking your car is they take your car, manufacturer certificate of origin, the whole thing, they turn it into a California state motor vehicle, which means it belongs to them, which means that you pay registration fees to rent their property back from them to work for them, drive around.
That's why the DMV is corporate.
That's a whole different thing.
Because if you had a claim on the vehicle, and you had legal title to the vehicle, and you registered it through the Secretary of State of the United States, you would have diplomatic plates and you wouldn't even get pulled over.
Right. No, I guess
If that's what you're trying to avoid, that's how you would set yourself up for that situation.
People getting in just as much trouble, getting pulled over with an international driver's license.
Here's why. You know why? Can I explain why? Here's why.
That's what I'm wondering.
Because here's what was happening.
Yeah.
What was happening is the cop goes, fine, get an international driving permit. Can I see the driver's license, country of origin, please?
Yeah.
Well, I got one from Nicaragua. Really? Can I see habla inglés? And you go, well, you don't look like you're from Nicaragua. Exactly. So in our case, with the Dominion of Melchizedek, you have a driver's license that's good for the islands. It's 5 islands in the South Pacific.
Okay.
You know, 5 islands in the South Pacific. There's Tiangi, Rundai, part of, look it up on the internet. It's gov-dom.com, and you can look up the whole thing. But you have a driver's license for the island, which connects to the United Nations permit. And in the United Nations permit, we signed the travel treaty agreements on the front page, bottom column. Actually, show her your. She's got her whole thing here. Okay. But that's why, because they were selling for $2,500. They were selling driver's licenses out of Nicaragua. Okay, and they have to connect to a Nicaraguan driver. You can go down to AAA. I can get an international driving permit that's good for all over the world. It has to connect to my U.S. state driver's license. And the next step, as Brandon knows, is the Real ID Act, which means that they're going to take your driver's license, turn it into federal ID, and the whole thing. So, for example, what Brandon has as our Postmaster General is this document, which is international driving permit. And you can't see it, but right there, first column at the bottom, actually is the Dominion of Melchizedek, because we signed it, and there's her. And this is your international UN, and this is good anywhere in the world for any type of vehicle, and it expires in 2016. So it's good for however many years. And this is her domestic driving permit for the island. And because she's my wife, actually, she gets a card, which is a diplomatic identification card. Nice. And she has a passport, which is, once again, the diplomatic passport. Diplomatic passport.
Did you go there to get this?
As wife of an ambassador. No, I'm an ambassador at large and a member of the Council of Elders for the country. That's her, wife of ambassador. We've used this in Egypt and Israel and Jordan and Chile. You can't just get into the United States because it's not recognized by the U.S. yet. But our Chief Justice is like best friends with Hillary Clinton and Obama and the whole thing. So once we get our country code, these will be worth $200,000.
Cool.
Easy. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump into this.
Right.
That's the difference between the California State driver's license. And what you do with this is you turn in your California State driver's license, saying I don't want the benefit. This is actual constructive notice that I am revoking all benefits and privileges. Right. And you get a state ID, which is what Brandon said.
Right.
That way you can then hand the guy and say, look, I'm a dual citizen. Here's my state ID, here's my international driving permit, and actually because I'm an ambassador for foreign nation state, twice. Once the cop said, don't care, sign it or I'll beat you up and throw you in jail. Signed it, sent a letter to the court wrote me a letter back, said, we're very sorry for writing you the ticket, have a good day. Second time, cop said, Sorry to pull you over, Mr. Ambassador. Have a good day. Pull safely into traffic.
Check it out, probably.
You said you had to buy the islands?
No, we were on the no, but yeah, you can buy it. You can buy an island and set up your government. Go on, Brandon. Go ahead. Sorry about that.
Actually, Dave, I was wondering if you had anything that you feel that maybe we didn't cover or anything to add?
Well, just a couple thoughts, and I know that as you learn this stuff, you're going to have a couple knee-jerk reactions, and one is when confronted by the fiction, you're going to tend to get mad. Don't do it. Don't go there.
Yeah.
The other is you're going to tend to want to tell them, make positive statements. Creditors don't make statements. Creditors ask questions. You know, if someone comes up to you and says, like your driving technique there, you know, license registration, sir. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't know. Our creditor is supposed to have driver's licenses. Now, it's pretty far out there what I'm saying right now, but that's the kind of thing you need to learn to do.
And
consider what they're saying carefully and ask them questions that are constructive, because if you obstruct them, then you're going into controversy, and that's the thing you want to avoid.
Yeah. Don't obstruct.
Now, Raymond, I sent you a couple documents just now. Take a look at them. They may be useful in giving people a good background of what, where we actually are with all this, as far as what created what and how we got into this mess.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if they're going to be helpful. Feel free to butcher them all you want.
Okay.
But, one basically goes the route of explaining how a birth certificate creates our present state of indebtedness.
Right. And we'll make all these documents available on the website. If you guys want to continue, hold on. If you guys want to continue and make this a weekly thing, what we're going to do is we've already got a website up and running that will give you access to the audio files and video files that we create here, all the documents, educational documents, great reading. Like we have an entire document just on accepted for value. I know you've heard me say it a couple times, but it probably means nothing to most of you. And all the techniques and all the procedures, we'll give you samples of negotiable instruments, things like that, so that we'll be better prepared here in the classroom for what we're doing. And then I'll even give you a list of, actually, you can probably write this down right now. If you're interested in, okay.
And that mortgage is active.
Yeah, that involves another process. We'll get into that. Optional Form 90, Optional Form 91, and 1099A. It's getting the funds out of the escrow.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll take up 2 classes, just that subject. Yeah, it's a different process than what we've discussed here so far. Uh-oh. What am I doing? I got too much gain. All right. All right. What was I going to write? Oh, if you guys, one of the people I would recommend, if you want to get more information on this, Winston Shrout has excellent materials available on his website. Here's the website. It's WSSIC.com, and that stands for Winston Shrout Solutions in Commerce. And I would recommend getting the 1099. There's a video called 1099 and its history, or something like that. Yeah, 1099 OID and its place in history. I would recommend getting the Strawman trilogy. I would recommend getting the Accepted for Value trilogy. And I would recommend the San Antonio seminar and the Orlando seminar, which just just wrapped up. Yeah, it's probably not available yet, but you can pre-order. Okay, so I would recommend going to that site and picking those things up. Strawman Trilogy? No, 1099 OID and its place in history.
Okay, right.
The Strawman Trilogy.
Okay.
The Accepted for Value Trilogy. And then San Antonio and Orlando seminars. And then realistically, the man who I feel has the best grasp on this and who all seems to be focused purely on operating as a creditor, and really if you want to get your mindset in being a creditor, the guy to go to is Jack Smith. Now, unfortunately, Jack Smith in his infinite wisdom does not have anything out there for you to go buy from him. There's no materials, there's no seminar, or actually you can get the seminar, but he doesn't actually sell them or offer them. Okay? So if you want to get on his Monday night downloads, which is a weekly class, he does just like this. He does it in Cleveland, Ohio. He does a class just like this. They record it, and then they will send it to you the next day to download as a link. It'll cost you $1.50 per download, or per week, I should say. And that's available. You have to send an email to Caleb, that's CALEB, at glwb.net.
Say that again?
Caleb, CALEB as in boy, at glwb as in boy.net. And just send him an email and say, I want to get on the Monday night downloads.
And some of those classes are available on the Creditors in Commerce site, is that correct?
Yes, some of them are. So those are probably the best two resources I can think of as far as learning what we're doing here. Winston will actually give you discs with actual materials on them, like commercial liens, negotiable instruments, pleadings for court cases, samples on filling out tax forms. Like, he'll give you all of those things on his discs.
But some of them have typos.
Yeah, they do. And that's why I said, really, don't take any materials anyone gives you and just turn around and use them. I would never recommend that unless you own the technology. Recreate the technology. Make it your own and understand it inside and out before you use any of it.
Are you familiar with the Tim Turner foundational package?
Tim Turner? No, I'm not. But it could be good stuff. I'm saying these are the guys that I'm partial to, but I know that there's other guys out there giving some. Actually, I just came across a guy last night the other day named Patrick something. Patrick Devine, that's him. And he has a Yahoo group called 1099 OID. It's 1099-OID. And he gave a great conference call just the other night on the 1099A, using it as an acquisition document. So there are some guys out there who are giving really good information still.
What was his email or website?
You'd have to go to Yahoo Groups. And it's 1099. It's like groups.yahoo.com/whatever they have / and then they have the name of the group, and the name of the group is 1099-O-I-D. If you just go to the Yahoo Groups site and do a search for 1099-OID, it'll probably be the first thing that come up.
Could you go a little bit into what your classes are going to be running for and how long they'll be?
Yeah, I was thinking we would probably run 3 to 4 hours a week. We'll be bringing in actual cases. So we'll be discussing like where you're at and what you want to accomplish and where you want to go with the technology. And we will devise between us in an exchange how a creditor would go about bringing a remedy or a solution. So I'm not just going to force feed you materials and say, here, this is all you need. Here's a commercial lien. Because realistically, you're going to look at it and go, okay, Great. And you'll be able to fill your name in, you'll be able to fill the other party's name in, but really you don't know what the hell you're doing. And the fact is, people get themselves in trouble with this technology if they don't understand what they're doing. Like I've known people who all they heard was, oh, you just got to file a UCC1. So they went and they filed a UCC1 and they named like a judge as the debtor. Okay, it didn't bode well for them. Okay, so don't start doing things unless you really understand. And I'm here to tell you, if you're ever feeling adversarial against any public entity, judges, lawyers, anything like that, you're in the wrong state of mind. You're going the wrong path. Let's look at it this way. To be a physical or a financial creditor, you got to be a spiritual creditor. And to be a spiritual creditor, go back to that book of commerce, the Bible, because sin is debt. And whether we're talking about the 10 Commandments or the 7 deadly sins, if you're coming from anger, wrath, covetousness, greed, any of those things, you're not being a creditor spiritually, and it's not going to bode well for you commercially either. So a creditor will always be coming from love. I know that sounds weird, but for those, I would think this would be the right venue to get this message across. The reason why I thought that this venue with Robin would be the perfect venue is that you in this room have already committed yourself at some level to a conscious evolution, and because of that, you're probably going to be the best creditors out there. And there's people out there that have been doing this for years who still don't get it. They're still fighting. And they're fighting and fighting and fighting. And yeah, a lot of them, like there's some people out there, I won't name any names, but there's guys out there who have tremendous success fighting. But they're basically an enemy to the state. Yeah, you don't want to be, because you know what? They've created a new class of terrorists. You know what they call it? Paper terrorists. All because of what we're doing. These commercial liens and all these things. These documents are so powerful that the misuse of them could get you classified as a terrorist. Okay? Just to let you know. That's why you have to be a spiritual creditor as well as a physical creditor. Because if you're not coming from the right place, then you're a terrorist. And you'll get the iron yoke off to Guantanamo with you. Okay? So keep that in mind.
A good time to point out that I give away a free handbook on how to use universal laws and principles in daily life to support people in being creditors.
I don't have any handbooks. Wait, what?
I've written a free book.
Oh, you wrote
on my website. Yeah,
okay.
One of the books you didn't read.
Okay.
It's www.r is the letter R, lifecoach.com.
He's a Hermosa Beach homeboy, so we live right next to each other.
Yeah, literally down the street.
Not even that, a block away. We're
Yeah.
on the second, he's on 21st.
Yeah, I thought that was so crazy. Yeah, they're like a block away.
And there's 2 free ebooks on there. You can download them, and it will open your eyes to the difference between being responsible and being a debtor.
Whichever is your whole name, too.
And
Is it O-U-R or R? The letter
R is
It's the letter R. Here, I'll write it.
And then there's
Isn't just
book
R.
that is all the universal laws and principles governing life. And that, if you're living in integrity with those laws and those principles, you cannot not be a creditor. Now, you'll find some of those laws are but stretch. You'll find it more than one.
Introduce yourself.
This is Niall
My name's Niall.
Your last name?
Nicholson.
For the time.
That'll be the title he goes by here. Who's asking the question?
Parting thoughts?
Anything else? Any other questions?
When you sign your piece of paper, if you sign it like reserved without prejudice, all rights reserved. I mean,
Without prejudice, UCC, that
yeah.
306-308.
Yeah. What is that? Is that?
Firstly,
That what you're doing when
All
you
rights reserved without prejudice.
right, what it means is that you're not subrogating. Does everyone know the word meaning of the word subrogation? Okay. When you're operating under benefits and privileges, you're subrogating your rights. Okay? You subrogated your rights when you signed up for Social Security. You subrogated the rights to use that exemption, that credit side of the account. You subrogated that right to the United States. Corporation, United States.
Okay.
Okay,
So
so when you sign with all rights reserved, you're not subrogating. You're not allowing them to have your rights.
but that's after you file UCC.
I don't sign it on anything.
You don't sign it.
Yeah, again, there's a lot of things out there floating around that this whole commercial process movement, I'll call it, comes out of the Patriot movement. Okay? And there's flaws with the Patriot movement. For one, Patriots look at the United States as the enemy, and they're at war with the United States. So a lot of the technology because it's come up out of the Patriot movement, is very dangerous. That's why we're having these classes, because you will come across things. There'll be this document on how great the 1099 OID is and how to use it, and it'll be perfect. And then right there next to it will be a document on how to take a judge's bond or something. You know what I mean? And if you look at those as being the same type of technology, and you're not thinking like a creditor, you won't be able to distinguish. That's okay. I don't know about that. Whereas now, from my understanding, I can look at any technology and see what's actually being done, and is it something I need to worry about?
What was the one thing that made you decide to get into this? Was there an incident that happened to you?
Yes.
Could you tell that to us?
My brother.
Parents killed by the Joker?
No. It was actually out of love. My brother came to me and had a situation that he couldn't handle with, what's the word I'm looking for? Conventional methods. And I told him I knew if he was willing to risk it all, I knew of another way, and that I would assist him in that. And that's what really got me into this, like, full 100%. Up until that point, it was just something I knew. I didn't actually practice it on a regular basis or anything because I was fine. I was a debtor. I was only concerned with myself and my family, but.
Were you a tax accountant or what?
No, my dad is.
I wanted to ask you a question in response to your saying when you sign your name, all rights reserved. On some level, when you make a mark of distinction like that, you're identifying yourself as a potential problem to the government at large.
I call it the nut quotient. I say you're not only are you identifying yourself as a complete wacko.
The last thing in the world you want to do is put yourself out there as a target.
And
so
anytime
why don't you paint a bullseye in the middle of your chest, going, "Yes, I'm going to sign my name, but I'm going to sign it like a wacko."
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on that tonight, but we'll get into that in later classes about the actual use of the language, that the English language, our use of it is completely whacked out, and we're all telling lies to each other, even when you think you're telling the truth. And for one, signature, which begins with the letter SI, is a simulation. Okay? Simulation is fictional. What you would want to do is an autograph. And an autograph being AU, which is authentic, authority, autograph, the symbol for gold, AU. Okay? That's not a mistake. Either in our infinite wisdom we put it, I see it everywhere I look. The breakdown of how things are is in everything we do because we know it, and either Like, I can get serious commercial messages out of any movie I watch, and I guarantee you the person who wrote the movie wasn't intending for me to get that commercial message, but it's there. And it's in songs, and it's in literature. It's in everything around us because we all know it, and we put it into our work. We can't help but put it in our work, and we've embedded it in our language, whether it was intentional or not. It is embedded in our language. Every word you use has a very distinct meaning, and in future classes you'll see I'll have my Black's Law Dictionary, my Bible, and I'll maybe have a Bouvier's Law Dictionary. But those are the books. Those are the only books I need in commerce. Those 3 books, and I know, and it has everything I need to know.
Can you write that down?
Black's Law Dictionary, Bouvier's, which is Bouviere, something like that. And I have 8. It doesn't matter. Remember, those definitions are for jurisdiction B. So I'm not saying that that's where you get your definition. You want to get into actual Latin and etymology if you really want to understand what these words mean. They're not going to tell you signature means simulation. They're not going to tell you that autograph means authentic.
Get you right. She just wanted the DOM's website.
Oh yeah, it's gov-dom.org.
What's that? What's in that?
That's the dominion of Melchizedek.
Melchizedek is biblical.
G-O-V dash DOM, D-O-M, dominion of Melchizedek.org. It has that thing. It should be up on the website by now, too, Brandon.
Which version of Black's Law?
I use 8, the most current. Yeah.
A lot of people use 6 or 8.
Why would you
What
want?
version of the Bible?
The Masonic version.
There's another version that's the easiest one. It's a little hard to find, but you can get it at Destiny Publishers. It's called The Holy Bible in Modern English by Farrar Fenton, F-E-N-T-O-N. The Holy Bible in Modern English by Farrar Fenton. And it's published by Destiny Publishers.
And that's old and new, right?
Yeah, Old and New
Okay.
Testament, but it's considered the best. It's considered by scholars the best modern translation edition.
Yeah, and I mean realistically, it's no matter what version you get, the same story is in there. Does anyone know? Was it discussed in this is something I actually just came across in my head the other day. The amount of time for a transition from like one accounting system to another is 120 days. Does anyone know the amount of time between the death of St. John the Baptist to the death of Jesus? Does anyone know what that time period was? I bet you it was 120 days. Because we went from one accounting system to another. Because John gave his blood for the last payment on the old covenant. We have a 120-day transition, and then Jesus gave his blood in prepayment for the new contract. So it was just something I was thinking about. I was like, ooh, 120 days is transition from one accounting system to another, and we went through a transition. And again, I don't know how much of the Bible is actually facts. It could all be fabricated for all I know. But the reality is that it's not whether those events happened, it's the way that it's told to you. Because it is it's giving you so much information that I'm like amazed that it didn't dawn on me earlier what was being said in these books. But I think I just took it as, oh yeah, these are stories, and not reading into the numbers. The numbers are all significant. I mean, realistically, I could go into deeper layers about how sacred geometry is in there, and universal laws beyond the subject of this room are in there. But it's all there, and it's like years ago I turned away from Western religion, and I became very deeply enthralled by Eastern philosophy and religion. And I was like, yes, Zen Buddhism is the way to go. And they are great, and I love the Eastern philosophies, and I still follow them, but in my understandings of astrology and in commerce, it really brought me back to Western religion, because what I did realize that to me, what Eastern religion does is it gives you how to handle yourself as an individual. That's what Eastern religion gives you. If you can bring yourself to that level of enlightenment and understand that enlightenment is a practice, it's never something you achieve. It's not like, ta-da, I'm enlightened. That's not how it works. And that's the same as being a creditor. You don't just, I'm a creditor because I filed something or because I have this piece of paper. That's not what that's not how being a creditor works. Being enlightened and being a creditor is a practice. It only comes from the now. Okay? And only when you can leave everything of the past behind you and come from the now. Remember Dave said creditors ask questions? It's because they're coming from the now. They're not making up anything about the past. They're coming from this moment now. And if I'm coming from this moment now and my heart is in the right place and I'm all about a solution and resolution, well, then it's going to naturally lead me to a question. And the question's going to be along the lines of, how can I help you? How can I resolve this? What is it you need? What is it you want? Right? And that's why a creditor is always asking questions, because until he figures out what it is that the debtor needs, he's going to be asking. I'm here to help you. Truly, I'm here to help you.
Maybe we'll wrap it up here, but just in summary, because of this global meltdown and what's going on, you know, are we all going to be trading in Ameros, Oreo cookies? What's going to happen? Any discussion of what?
Ameros and Federal Reserve notes, are they an A or B?
B.
Why do you care? Does it matter whether we're using Ameros or francs, euros,
yen?
I mean, it really doesn't matter. In fact, I mean, the way I see it, I'm rooting for the one world government. I'm like, go one world government. Truly. Because that's, when we have a global system of law and commerce, because what I do know is that this system is all based on rule of law. And that's the best system. It isn't a tyrannical system. It is far from it. It is purely based on the rule of law. If you understand creditor-debtor, then you understand how everything works.
But what about all the corruption? There's so many judges that are...
You take responsibility. You come across it. I told you. If you know how to operate an A, you can get rid of a judge like that. You can get rid of an attorney like that. You can get rid of any public official because they're all bonded. The fact that they're in public doing that job, they have to have a bond. They have to have that limited liability. And if they are corrupt and doing something wrong against the rule of law, then it's your responsibility to keep them in check. First, you send them a notice of correction. You've got 15 days to correct your wrong. In 15 days, I'm going to perfect a claim against you, liquidate it, and you won't be Mr. Police Officer anymore. It is power. And if you're coming from the place of, I'm here helping the community, there's nothing they can do to you. Nothing that they can do to you that's negative. Because you're coming from the place of, I'm taking responsibility for this. I'm correcting you. Or I'm giving you the opportunity to correct your actions. You don't correct your actions, I'm going to hold you liable. From over here in A. And that's going to hurt in B. So, yeah, there are, I'm not saying that everyone's a saint. I'm not saying that. There are people out there that are messed up. And they do messed up stuff. But are we going to be a victim to the messed up people doing messed up stuff? Or are we going to be responsible and create the world we want? Because that's the power you have. It's almost like you don't want to believe it because there's too much responsibility. But that's how we walk around. And even Eastern philosophy will tell you that. Eastern philosophy tells you you're God. You're the center of the universe, but you pretend like you're not. You pretend like you're not because that's what makes the game fun. Right? Isn't that what makes the game fun? We pretend like all these pressures around us are real, and it gives us our drive in life. Fact is, it's all made up. You make up everything. Yeah. And It's just waiting for us to step up and take responsibility.
It got us here.
Yeah, it's like, did you notice, I was actually very careful. I don't know how many of you actually read the email that had the description of what this class was going to be about, but I was actually very, very careful in selecting the words I used in that. Because I didn't want to make this about getting something for nothing, because it's not what it's about. And a lot of people take it that way. And if that's your come from, you're not being a creditor.
And I have to say, I didn't change one word of the email that he sent me. When I sent that, I'm like, okay.
Actually, when I called him, he's like, well, don't you want to maybe put something about you in there? I'm like, no, this isn't about me. I'm not telling you I have anything to give you. I have nothing to give you. Okay? When you get that there's nothing to get, and that it's completely about your understanding and your come from, that's where it's all going to be. That's the value in this class. Because I'm going to keep showing you how ridiculous you're being. I'm going to show you every time you're being a debtor. That's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to hold up the mirror and say, look what you're doing. Look what you're doing. But you guys are going to teach yourselves everything. And you're going to come to your own understanding of it. And you guys are going to surpass my understanding and take this beyond and educate the world with it.
Are there schools of thought around being creditors that you've come across?
Not really. Like I said, take every spiritual philosophy that's out there, and the ultimate achievement in that spiritual philosophy, and that's being a creditor. Whether you call it Christ consciousness, whether you call it mastery, whether you call it Buddhism, being in a, what's the word? No, what's the other word? Nirvana. Okay, whether you're talking about being enlightened, being in the state of nirvana, being Christ consciousness, no matter what your philosophy is, that's being a creditor. When you're not coming from the negative, when you're not coming from the past. Remember when Jesus was on trial with Pilate? Pilate's, making these presumptions and assumptions and asking these questions, and Jesus' stand was, that's what you say. He wasn't there defending himself. He was asking questions. He was coming from the now. They're trying to teach you something. They're trying to tell you something. In all these writings and all these great books and all these philosophies, there's one idea they're trying to get across to you. You're responsible.
Yeah, how do you see this idea of staying in honor and commerce in connection with your right to refuse the contract or your right to rescind the contract, for instance, within 3 days?
What do you mean? Staying in honor and rescinding?
Yeah, I mean, you can rescind or you can refuse the contract, but you're saying you should accept the offer
Yeah.
to stay in honor. So, you stay in honor and actually refuse the contract and rescind the contract?
That doesn't sound like staying in honor. I guess I'd have to hear a specific situation, but it sounds like to me if you're rescinding, it depends what you're rescinding. Like I said, you created the trust for the deed of trust on your house, right? Recreate it. I don't see anything wrong with that. Saying, I changed my mind. Just like when American Express decided they changed the idea of how they were going to run his relationship. They said, no, we're not going to do it that way anymore. This is the new way. Well, okay, I have that same power. I said, you're not going to be the trustee and the beneficiary anymore. I'm going to change that around. And that's not being in dishonor. It's just creating a new contract. Remember, every time you do something, it's a new trust, it's a new contract. You guys, I want to mention also, I forgot about this. We have a conference call that we've been running since May, weekly, for creditors in commerce. Dave and Kevin and the guys who were on the line earlier, they're actually a part of that. And if you guys want, you can actually download and listen to all our past conference calls. I wouldn't go all the way back to the beginning. Maybe start at like episode 18 and move up from there. Because episode 18, I started with trust and I went into detail. It's literally a 3-hour discussion just on trust. Okay, like I said, you could take a long time to learn the intricacies of what we're doing here. Because there's so much to it. Like, I'm throwing things out there left and right, but really, there's a lot more detail in all of this. that we're not touching on. Okay, it's not, oh yeah, I get it now, I'm going to go be a creditor. You know, it's not really how it works. But if you guys want, you can go to creditorsincommerce.com, and there'll be a link to a TalkShoe site. TalkShoe is like a, I don't know, online radio thing or something. And at TalkShoe, you can download all our past calls. So I'll spell that for those who don't have a command of the English language.
Are you sure you can download them?
Yes. You have to. You don't go to the Creditors in Commerce site is just like my kind of landing page. You got to click on the link to take you to the TalkShoe site, and then because it's a private call, you're going to have to register for a free account from TalkShoe so that you can access them. Okay, because it won't let just anyone access them. But as soon as you sign up for a TalkShoe account, they're free. Then you can access all the past shows. And I wouldn't go all the way back. In fact, the last show we did, which was, I think, December 15th or December 11th, was by far the best one we've done. You listened to it? Yeah. Yeah. So it was a really good one. I think we really hit on a lot of the spiritual concepts and integrated it with the commercial concepts. And we actually discussed the 1099 OID, the 1099A. We actually went over all those things, but it was a 4-hour call, but it really, I think, laid a very good framework for where we're going as creditors in commerce. And I would, like I said, I wouldn't go back further than 18 because, you know, it's all repeat. You know, week after week, you'll hear, even in these classes, you'll see a lot of times we're going over the same stuff because it takes you hearing it 3 different ways to really get it, and it takes me explaining it 3 different ways for me to get it. So really, you guys aren't going to get any of this until you've taught it to other people and explained it at least 3 different ways. Realistically, that's been my experience. The funny thing is, people always thank me for giving the conference calls. I'm like, you guys don't understand. I'm the one benefiting. You guys think you're benefiting. I'm the one benefiting because I have to explain it so many different ways to try to get the concept across to you that I learn it better. I get a more complete understanding.
So you can pick that up if you're listening to the conference call.
All right. I think we're ready to wrap it up. Any last questions?
There's no spaces between creditors and commerce.
Yeah, it's just creditors in commerce.
TalkShoe, S-H-U?
S-H-O-E.
Okay.
So we'll let everybody know once we've worked out the details on the start date for their classes and what kind of pricing, how we're going to work it.
Okay, did everyone give their email address and stuff to Robin?
Let's keep going.
Thank you, guys.
Hermosa, yeah. Actually, I grew up in Hermosa, but I grew up in Northern California. Came back to go to USC, then West Redondo, and then Hermosa.
Yeah, that's awesome. I felt like it's really, it's all been coming to like a culmination. When I showed up here a couple weeks ago,